For those that know me, you know I'm a big learning fan. Like, I love learning to a ridiculous degree. I read that one book called The Brain That Changed Itself way back before I started college. And it was one of the moments that I decided that I really wanted to understand learning. I wanted to learn about learning. It got me into a whole journey of trying to understand how the brain was working and ultimately into neuroscience and AI. The one thing that I realized throughout this journey is that there are better ways to learn than others. There are some fundamental rules that constrain our learning, dictated by how our brain is structured. Understanding these rules to learn topics like math, computer science, and physics greatly help in speeding up the learning process. Now, I got the chance to interview the learning legend Justin Sky-zack on a whole lot of topics around learning technical stuff like math efficiently. What I like about Justin's learning journey is that he doesn't come from like an academic background and family. His way of learning, at least at first, was very self-directed, and throughout his studies he discovered great ways to learn that are actually grounded in the literature. He applied all of these learning techniques throughout his studies while he was teaching and mentoring students, while he was doing research, and right now while he's building AI-driven system for Math Academy, where he's currently the Chief Quant Director of Analytic. Big title. I've put a whole lot of chapters throughout the interview, so feel free to move around the different segments of the discussion. It's around 4 hours, so please take a day off from school or work, call in sick, and just brew about like 2 liters of coffee or tea while you watch this this thing. We're going to cover his learning backstory, what cognitive science says about the fastest path to mastery, why he thinks learning math is a lot like training for a sport, and his practical advice for adults, kids, old people, people with ADHD, researcher. We got it covered for everyone in this interview. Enjoy, folks, and big thanks to everyone that contributed the question. It really helps. Justin, first of all, thank you for being here. Really a pleasure. Can you give us like a high-level introduction about like yourself and what you're working at the moment?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Justin Sky-zack. I'm the Chief Quant and Director of Analytics at Math Academy. We're an adaptive online math learning platform, elementary school through university. Our goal is to cover all of math and math-adjacent stuff. And we take a full nerd approach to learning. So just trying to optimize at every moment, make sure the student is working on the learning tasks that are the most efficient use of their time. We're all about learning efficiency. And so what I'm kind of working on right now, what we're all working on, and has consumed my life for the past several months, if not years, is taking us from a workshop to a factory transition where we can really churn out a lot of amazing content at the same level of quality that we have been churning out for years, trying to floor the gas on this thing. So I used to, in the podcast, we'll get into a lot of stories about like our own, probably your learning background, my learning background, how we found kind of where we're at right now. But nowadays it's like, it's really startup, early stage company grind mode. And that's just like, my life has just been totally engulfed by this tornado in a good way. It brings together a lot of stuff, but nevertheless, like there's not a whole lot of free time for learning just for fun anymore. It's like, let's go.
And like it's I find it's the most rewarding, that sort of pressure, when it's for something that actually is working. Like
Yes.
like when you're trying it out and nothing is giving you feedback, it's a bit harder. But once you have this feedback from the environment that like, yes, it's actually is useful and people are loving it, and like there's growth and all that, it can be high pressure but still super rewarding.
Totally. Well, there's that saying, right? Nothing succeeds like success, which I mean, on the surface sounds kind of dumb, kind of like, well, duh. Like, but really, it's like whether it's building a company, working on a project, learning math, learning anything. It's like as you experience these small wins, you get a lot of motivation to continue doing it, and that motivation. It's at least for me, that's been one of the best sources of motivation. Is just like knowing that, hey, this is working, and it can work even better if I keep doing it and do it more efficiently, and just see where this goes.
And you see the path clearly also, like
Yeah,
the environment that you're in is rewarding you in some area. It's telling you where you suck, like pretty directly.
absolutely.
So like you know what to improve and like why you're doing this stuff and why you're learning this thing in order to do that other element. So talking about like learning and efficiency, like I saw in your blog that like you self-studied like 3,000 hours of college math in high school, right?
Yeah.
Which is absolutely kind of just like even if we remove the math, just like this amount of hours, I think like even the average high schooler might not go through that
Yeah.
amount. Like first of all, like I want to start off but like where did that passion to like actually do that stuff come from? I saw that your background, like you don't have like like peers around you that were academic or some sort of a researcher or stuff like that. What was the main driver here?
Right. So this was kind of like a chance event. And it was kind of like, there's, I'd always liked math class growing up in middle school. And like, it was my favorite class. Math was my favorite class. But am I going to go learn math outside of class? Like that thought just never really occurred to me. I was not that much into math. But at some point in high school, actually, the summer after 10th grade, I had just finished up pre-calculus, and it was a summer, and I was actually getting kind of excited about learning calculus because calculus is like, when you watch like a sci-fi movie and like there's always a scientist on the board, there's got to be the integral signs, the derivatives, like that's kind of, I mean, just at a very surface level, it's like what's advanced math for somebody who's going in through high school or like learning pre-calc or algebra, like it's calculus. Like that's the first thing, at least for me, that came to mind. And so knowing that I was just, hey, I'm going to learn this next year. Like I just finished pre-calculus. Calculus is next up. We did a little bit of calculus at the end of pre-calc, and I was just like, I was getting ready to go. I was really interested in like science. Like I knew I was going to go into STEM in some form, and it was just like I was getting a little antsy. So I'm like, why don't I like I don't know how this is going to go, but why don't I just try and teach it myself? Like, what's the way? Like, I mean, I guess I'll learn it next year at school, but like, if I could just teach it to myself over the summer, that'd be awesome. So it was just this idea. It wasn't, and nobody really planted that in my head. It was just one of those things where I was just thinking one day, it's like, why don't I just try and do this? But yeah, that ended up turning into this kind of chance event spark that kind of led to the trajectory that I'm in now in my obsession with efficient learning. And so how it kind of ended up is I found this pretty well sequenced calculus
Okay.
course. It was almost like a proto math academy type thing. It was in some like online course collection, like the national repository of online courses, and it was like this. You'd go in and there'd be like a couple. It was broken up into like maybe 50 or 60 or more lessons, the AP calculus course. And you'd go in, you'd read a little bit on some slide of information, and then you'd solve some problems. And they were very concrete problems. You got a lot of reps and stuff. So it was a great course. Unfortunately, it no longer exists. It was like sold to somebody and revamped and whatever. And it's just, I mean, I had to,
Sad.
yeah, yeah. So you can't just like go learn it from there
Yeah.
anymore. Um, but this ended up working really, really well. Actually, way better than I thought it was going to go. I thought I was going to spend like the whole summer just grinding calculus and maybe maybe 1 hour a day and come out and have learned like the first third or something. But actually, like just like we were talking about, success breeds success. Like having this small win stack up, like got through lesson one, got through lesson two, solving problems. Hey, this is not a big deal. This is actually I like it. This is fun. And so it was actually so fun that I was I used to play more video games, and so math took the place of video games, and like it was just it almost felt like progressing through levels and in a video game, and And so I just kind of leaned into it, and I just holed up in my room working on calculus problems for like 8 hours a day or something because I was just obsessed. And so my parents are just like, my mom's an art major in school. My dad's a business major, just logistics for a healthcare company. Like they don't, and
Yeah.
nobody in my family really looks technical or mathematical or anything. So I'm just like, it's like I'm talking with other parents and other like like what's your kid doing over the summer? Like oh he's just like in his room like learning calculus. It's like oh almost like as if I were just like
Oh,
in the basement playing a video game
yeah, exactly.
and and but like nobody says like oh yeah my kid's in the basement playing a video game like 8 hours a day over the summer. It's great like
Did
but
they try
it's
to tell you like to go out and like do other stuff, or like what were
they were
the
just
reaction?
really confused honestly. It was because it's like I mean it started out
Yeah.
like wow my kid is learning like taking in his education into his own hands and he's uh prepping for the upcoming school year. That's great. And then just like wait where is he? He's still in his room. He's just like working out these problems all day. Like it's a kind of weird and
Yeah.
I mean they had never learned this kind of stuff themselves and they and nobody had like STEM careers or anything. But so it was one of those things that was like, well, it seems like it's a good thing, but it also seems like he's like addicted and obsessed to it. But it also seems like a good thing. So what do you what do you do? So they don't really like intervene or anything, which I think ended up being a good thing. I was very very unbalanced that summer, but it ended up
Like,
being a
can
good
you
thing.
walk us through like okay, like
Yeah,
I guess 3,000 hours like throughout like this whole
yeah.
like journey, Uh, like what did it look like day to day? Like, what did you look like
Yes.
day to day?
So the 3,000 hours. So after so that summer, was spent like maybe 30 days, like 8 hours a day, just like grinding this calculus course. And I was just by the end of this, I was just so sucked in. Like I want math. Give me more math. What's next? Like I can't. It's like yeah. It just felt like I had found this hack or something. Like nobody told me like you
Yeah.
can learn outside of class, and I'm like, okay, let's do it. This is working out amazingly well. I'm having fun. This is going to be great for the future. I don't really know exactly what it's going to do, but it seems like it's going to do good things. And so I was like, okay, so let's keep this going. Let's learn what's after calculus. I finished 1 month into the summer, and I'm like, okay, I don't know what's after calculus. I need to look up online, like what course comes after calculus. What's math above that? Is there math above that? I'm sure there's math above that, but I don't know what it is. So I stumbled into MIT OpenCourseWare because that has a nice, like, a sequencing of courses. It's like, well, you just what comes after calculus? We'll just look at the MIT undergrad math major. That
Yes.
kind of tells you what to do. And so that's when I started learning like linear algebra and multivariable calculus, and I would just work through the. I mean, it was much less structured than this original AP calculus course that I had found because MIT OpenCourseWare at the time that was really just a collection of lecture videos and some problem sets. Now I know they've built out some of their foundational courses a little more since then, augmented it with more learning materials, but at a time it was very very rough writing. Like here's like 20 lectures and here's all the problem sets go. And so I just did that, and I found some PDFs of the textbooks, and yeah, I was just doing that. So I did that the rest of the summer into the school year. When I got to school that following like 11th grade, I was just this whole self-study experience was making me realize how much time I was wasting in school, just kind of sitting there in class. And so I was like, well, I'm not going to go back to that. I'm going to keep leaning into this thing. So I would take the math books with me to like all my classes and just be doing that instead while trying to like look like I'm paying attention and stuff, uh, not
Yeah.
getting confiscated
Oh
and
boy.
stuff like that. But yeah, so I kept that going the following year, and yeah, it was this 3,000 hours thing. It was way more time than I really needed if I were working efficiently on learning this stuff. But I mean, as most teenagers, like I think I know everything. I know how to learn like I did not do my research on how to learn efficiently. I'm just like, okay, I'm going to go do it. And so I ended up hitting my head on basically every sort of ledge there was to hit my head on along the way. Like, like I kind of just discovering a lot of these principles, like in hindsight, really obvious principles of learning science, but like there was, I remember there was like a day or so that that I initially came into it thinking like, like, why am I working all these problems? I can just watch all the videos and learn it that way. And then so I just like took a day and I just like blew through like what I thought was like a third of the course, like watching videos. And I'm like, yeah, this is such a hack. Like I don't have to do the problems. I can just do the videos. And then I started like the following day, just tried to like work out some problems and realize like I didn't retain anything from it.
That's
And
the
so that
thing,
was
yeah.
just the learning of like, okay, I have to
Yeah.
do problems. And so
Yeah.
basically every single cognitive science principle, I violated initially during my self study and kind of learned from that. And yeah.
But I mean, like you said, you could compress it to like 750 hours, something like that, with a
Yeah,
good
I think so.
design system. But don't you think like this other chunk actually was about the meta learning game, and then this chunk, the 700 hours, was about the math skill? Because I don't know, like, because I went through the same thing, right? I was doing like I was really into learning at the intense level, and I felt like this was the kind of meta learning that you have to like see for yourself a bit, right? A bit like I don't know, in sport or art, like people could tell you the stuff, right, and tell you like you should do it this way and stuff like that, but then you will not understand what they're saying until you actually experience it, and then you're like, yeah, actually, yeah, I need to sleep, right? Or like, I should stay hydrated, otherwise like nothing works, right? That sort of stuff, right? Like this thing around the learning, which is the core, right? And after that, you can apply this kind of skill that you learn in other stuff, right? Because like the principle are kind of the same all across, and you're trying to map the principle to like the thing that you have, and then the thing that you want to learn. Do you think there's any of this, or like you could have learned also the meta learning skill a bit faster?
So I mean, on one hand, I think there was a little bit of value to having tried some inefficient forms of learning and only to realize like, hey, this doesn't work. And I think in any discipline that you are like seriously going into, that's going to be like your main this thing that you're doing. It's worth exploring the space of what just try things out, what works, what doesn't. But I just think about that spending 3,000 hours to get from from calculus all the way up through. I think I got through about like real analysis, abstract algebra, your junior level math major courses, and also some physics and stuff. If I had there was just a lot of time that I'd wasted just kind of being confused doing inefficient techniques that did not contribute to this holistic view of learning. A little bit, a little taste of like, did it wrong. Okay, correct to this. There's maybe some small amount, maybe like a couple percent of the time, I would say was like kind of useful in exploring the space. But there came to a point where I was really like, I just want to go fast
Yeah.
and learn this stuff. And it's like trudging through mud. And
Yeah.
the higher I got, the more things would come back to bite me, like not doing a proper review system, and just working on problems that were like way too hard. A lot of this stuff, I mean, some stuff I figured out on the fly, but a lot of it I really did not learn until years later how
Yeah.
to do this really, really efficiently. And if there's one thing that I wish that I had more during my teenage years and just like as a student, would have been guidance
Yeah,
on
that's
just
it.
how just tell me how to do it. Like I just want to learn math, and I'm fighting my way through hitting my head on all these ledges. Maybe a small amount of that is kind of shaping my view of like understanding what works and what doesn't. But the vast majority of that time, for me at least, felt like it had just gone to waste.
Yeah.
And yeah, there was some instances of like I also like my part of my goal in this was like I want to like just learn the core body of math so I can contribute to like do some cool research projects. And there came a point like around, maybe like 2,000 hours in or so, where I'm just like, I think I've learned enough.
Yeah.
And I'm going to do research. And what was this based on? This was just based on the sheer volume of time that I had put
Yeah.
into learning, not based on how far I had gone. And so I ended up doing a research project, which was just kind of like on my own. It had to do with finding a generalized formula for partial fractions decompositions, and I spent like a whole summer on it. And I mean, it was kind of fun. But what ended up happening is I was kind of groping around in the dark in a direction that I would later find out was just made completely trivial by some results in complex analysis. And complex analysis, I mean, it's a high level undergrad
Get
math
it.
thing, but it's not exactly super advanced math. And so
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like, well, if I just
They were
learn
trying to
all,
rediscover
yeah,
stuff that were already known.
exactly,
If you just
exactly,
had like went and then looked at it and you're like, yeah, that's the shape of it, and then you use it like
yeah,
that, and okay, now I understand the setup. Okay, I get your thought process here a lot because it seems that you were like um almost like discovering the whole cognitive science field on your own, and then
yeah.
like try to figure out how to learn on your own, and you like mostly rediscovered like a concept that were already proven. So like, did you got into cognitive science at that time or like afterward? Like, what happened here?
So cognitive science actually was not really on my radar
Okay.
until, well, I guess after high school, sort of at the beginning of college, I got sort of interested in neuroscience, computational neuroscience, and that led to kind of interest in AI and stuff. And that, I mean, it was kind of like cognitive science adjacent. And but it was really what really kind of flipped the switch for me was once I was responsible for other people's learning.
Right. Yeah.
So starting out, I did a lot of tutoring in high school also, and got I really liked tutoring and just math education in general. So at one point, I actually during college, I had a full-time data science job, and after graduating college, I was like, you know what, screw it, we're not doing data science anymore. We're doing math education, and we're gonna like find some way to incorporate all of the coding and whatever that I had enjoyed into math education. But it was really once I had a classroom of students who are kind of depending on me to set up some kind of structure that is going to result in them learning this material. That's when I realized a lot of things that were some of the less obvious stuff, like the importance of spaced review and interleaving and stuff. And so that's about the time that I also met Jason Roberts, founder of Math Academy. He and his wife Sandy founded it together, and so I was teaching in the original school program there, and so he had done a lot of just reading around the subject of cognitive
Yeah.
science. It was incorporating those principles, and so I was like, oh wow, this is really interesting. And for once, like it's like okay, this is the guidance that I
The
was like
stuff.
that I didn't have. I was just like groping around, discovered
Yeah.
maybe like a third of it on my own, and it was like two-thirds at least that was just like, oh my goodness, that makes total sense. I like, okay, but do that, do that, do that. Um, uh, and it was working in the classroom too. The more that we would leverage these cognitive science principles, the more the better the students would learn the material.
Yeah.
So and then at some point after that, actually around like maybe like 3 years ago or so, Jason was like, "Hey, we need to write up about like how the Science of Math Academy works. Can you just make a little like some information for the web page?" And I started on that and looked up like about 400 pages later. We had the Math Academy Way, this
Anyway,
big
yeah.
book on how we apply the cognitive science learning
This
principles.
is
But
cool. And
that was, yeah.
I think like when you're teaching, the meta learning skills become more obvious to you because like
Yeah.
that's the thing you're doing. You're like trying to make this other thing learn, right?
Mhm.
So like it's not really about the skill anymore, like the math, biology, or like this is just
Right.
something that goes into the scaffold that you're gonna go and then make the student learn. Because like there's two things, like in my view, right? However skilled you are at the thing that you're teaching, if you don't know how like learning is happening, um, you will have a hard time teaching. Like I've seen like a research level professor like being completely useless in the classroom, like actually useless. We're doing more harm than good. I know that because I was tutoring these classes and I was like, what is happening, right? And then the second thing is that like the learning is not coming from the teacher to the student. It is emerging from the student. So you have to make this emerge, right? So like it's not like you're gonna hammer them up with like whatever and then you're just gonna bulldoze them. If they don't want to learn, they won't learn. Right? They absolutely will not learn. So there's these two components that comes in, and I think like the whole like a field of cognitive science and like psychology, neuroscience, they had plenty of time to figure out like how to make this thing more efficient. So it's kind of it's kind of worthless to like spend time rediscovering stuff that is already working. I wanted
Yeah.
to ask
Yeah.
you. Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah, totally agree with, I've had that same experience with, high level professors. Like you kind of, right, you sign up for the class, you're like, wow, this professor's like really good at research. Like, I'm gonna learn so much. And then
Yeah.
you get in there and then you get served up these slam dunk problems that are like supposed to, the professor thinks like, oh, I'm going to create these like really just a few really nice, like really interesting problems and give them to the students, and you get those problems, you're like, what is this? Like, I don't even know where to
Oh
begin,
man.
and you just are flailing around, and the professor is, not really helping you bridge the
No.
gap from you to them. And I've seen this too in a lot of students I tutored as well. Yeah, it's
And I've seen it a
really
lot
unfortunate.
in engineering. Like actually, like it was plague in like I was tutoring a lot of engineers and sorry, student engineers, and like for some reason there was this kind of elitism in engineering where it was okay if the class, some part of the class was not understanding anything. And like they had this kind of weeding out of the people and stuff mentality, which in my view was kind of absolutely nonsensical. Like it is possible that all the class can get 100% in your thing if you understand, like if you're able to teach it properly. Like it is possible. It should be something that is in your mind, and that you should be able to kind of like put yourself back into question whether like what you're teaching is actually good or not, right? Um,
Mhm.
but
Yeah, we just kind of accepted that,
yeah,
right? The class moves in lockstep, and there's a normal distribution of grades at the end, and some of these grades are failing, some of them are like just barely understands the material. A few
yeah,
grades are like, okay, they get it. We just kind of accepted the system, but really, yeah, if you have you have every student working on what is the
yeah.
most efficient use of their time,
And, and
educational
that's the
outcomes can
thing. Like
improve.
if you look in these sort of system, the one that are outlier and they like the teachers like look at these get like it could be any teacher they would have done this because they're studying on their own and they figured that out, right? And I know that because most of the time it was me. Like I was like
Yeah.
going into these classes and I was like, this teacher doesn't know what he's doing, so I cannot just listen. I'm wasting time. So I was like doing the textbook. I was like getting my hands on like any past exam that was legally possible, any like hint of a problem I could solve, and I was drilling them and then drilling the teacher to show me like what he would have done in this case if it was like something that you had to work through. And then I was doing okay because I was not just listening to these guys because there was nothing of value here. I was listening to the material, learning the
Yeah.
material, and then trying to apply it to how they were grading it, which is totally different than what everybody else was doing. They were waiting for the material to kind of like be taught, but it was not taught
Yeah.
any shape or form. Okay, wait. I had
Totally.
a question about your research because you did some research as a teenager, and I wanted to understand like the fundamental math stuff you were doing, right? And the base that you set up. Like, did it help like push to those research projects, especially at the Fermi Lab and the CERN project you were doing?
Yeah, so I'll talk a bit about that. So the Fermilab and CERN projects, these were projects that I did with local universities. Fermilab was with Indiana University, South Bend, where I grew up, and in the Professor Elon Levine's lab. And then the CERN project was with a lab at Notre Dame. That's QuarkNet program, which connected like some of the top high school students in the areas with working on projects that were going on with some labs there at Notre Dame. And so the math, it was kind of funny. It helped in a lot of big ways get my foot in the door in terms of these projects. Because it's you learn a bunch of advanced math. You stand out as in my high school as like, okay, this who are we gonna pick? They could pick one student to send to this QuarkNet program at Notre Dame, and they're like, well, who are we gonna pick? Well, Justin is like just crushing the like calculus course as a grade early or whatever. Like I guess, and he's like seems to be like learning physics on his own. Like I don't know, send him. So that was yeah, it was just an obvious decision because that's what happens when you get like really like you find your
Yeah,
obsession, you get really ahead. People take notice, and you get
yeah,
a lot of opportunities to pursue that further.
too.
And with the other project, so my junior year, I was working on the Fermilab project, and that was actually just I was taking this research class in my high school where the point was to reach out to local professors and just try to get your foot in the door working on a research project with them. And so part of the thing that made me seem like, hey, this kid is gonna actually be able to help contribute a little and not just be a total waste of time was the fact that I already had my math foundations in place for all this stuff, and I'd taken it upon myself to learn. And so when I got to these started working with these labs, it was math was just a non-issue. I remember for so many other students in this in my high school research class, like they would go off to their labs as well during the school day, and just for like at the end of the school day for an hour is the last period of school, so you'd go out and leave early. So a lot of other people would be struggling with some of the math involved sometimes. Like maybe somebody would get into a physics lab, and they would not only have to spin up on the context that the lab is operating in, like what research are we doing, what are the materials, but like there's just a big mathematical gap that was placing
Yeah.
hard limits on this type of stuff that they could do. Now I didn't have that gap, and so that was good. Though I did have some gaps in other areas. Like, I mean, most of my projects had to do with experimental physics. So there was like
Yeah.
math was one side of it, but there was also, in the Fermilab project, I was trying to make a material to better transmit sound.
Yeah.
And I had never, like, I was not a very hands-on lab kind of person. So that was definitely a point of like, oh man, this is challenging. But in terms of, math just became a non-problem. And I think to anyone who wants to do research, especially high school research, it's like removing skill gaps is such a big advantage there, because you can, just imagine, like, say there's some lab, it's working in some setting, some research setting. If you have all your foundational skills in place, then you can just like take off running and be a serious contributing member of the lab. Every little pillar of foundational skills that you don't have in place is gonna slow you down. So I would say in my case, like, okay, the math was a pillar that I just knocked out of the park. That was like a non-issue. Some of the more hands-on experimental physics stuff was definitely more of a drag factor for me because I'd never trained up, that kind of hands-on.
But this is
stuff.
super interesting. And like, did you improve in like this experimental physics, like manipulation type of stuff you had to do during? Did you try to like learn it and train with it? Like, how did it look like that part?
So I could have leaned into this a lot more. So that I came in wanting to do theoretical physics.
Okay, right.
So I was like, I don't want to do experimental physics, but I want to do physics. And like, I mean, you're a high schooler. You're like, hey, can I get involved in this physics stuff? Like, then they're like, yeah,
You'll take whatever
on this project. So yeah, they're like, whatever. And I'm like, I'm not about to like turn down an experimental physics opportunity and say like, no, I want to do theoretical, like that or nothing.
Yeah.
And they're just like, get out of here, kid. What are you talking about? Like, so I was a little like, doing these, I'd not quite found my really good fit with these physics projects. It was like a halfway good fit, right? Because I had like that math pillar, like, okay, that was good. But the experimental physics pillar, I was just, I wasn't really interested in that kind of stuff. And I did not take it upon myself to learn this stuff outside a lab. And so it was kind of like I just did kind of run of the mill projects there, and this was enough to I ended up making it a junior year to the Intel International Science and Engineering Fair, and so this project was like it was good enough to get to that level, but it was not like good enough to like get place like get a medal or result in a paper or stuff like that, or even like kind of really set a direction for me to like I want to continue like looking into this more.
To be honest, like there's a whole lot of luck involved in like when you are a junior and then you enter in the lab and then like you get a paper out of it. It's kind of you got in there at the right time, right? I know that because my first paper was that like I got into a molecular biology lab, no experience at all, zero, right? I was not even like in molecular or like cell stuff yet. I was more in the math physics stuff. When I came into the lab, I just wanted to work on like learning memory and on the molecular level. I found a lab that was super interesting, read the paper, and I was like, can I just help? And then they were like, yeah. So I got in, and to be honest, I think I wasted them so much dollar by just fucking up the recipe again and again. It was crazy. There was like so many steps. I had to splice genes, like to change them, then I had to go make them sequence and stuff, and then I had to like grow the bacteria, and then like all this I was messing up like on the daily, right? And then I was like, I can't just mess up their whole thing and then like drop out of this. So there was this like lab assistant that was there. She was super old, and I was just like asking her all the questions. And it turned out at the end, like I got some good result. And I got into a big paper. My thing was in like their gigantic paper that they already was 95% done. So by chance I got in there, and my first like publication was Journal of Biochemistry or something like that. I to be 100% honest, I didn't understand like I would say like 30% of what they were doing. Like I understand my part and like how it kind of fitted, but the whole story was like, this is a bit beyond me.
That's interesting. I actually have a question for you on that. So you joined this molecular biology lab, and you did you mention you had strong like math and physics foundations by that time? So when you were joining the lab, was the math and physics? Were you leveraging the math and physics in your stuff?
Absolutely not.
Or okay, it was just like very
zero
pure biology, like methodology. Okay, yeah. That's interesting. Yeah.
To be honest, I could have been like an art major or like just a magician, and then like it would have made no difference. I had no clue what like when I got in. I had some concept about the cells and stuff, and like but I was so many layer of abstraction deep into this thing. Like I was literally like, I was running my experiment, make sure I didn't mess it up. And then I had like 3 hours of incubation or like waiting for the autoclave to finish cleaning my shit. So I had to, I was like blitzing through all their paper, the related paper, like pestering absolutely everybody, including the other lab that was next to us, about the dumbest question you could ever imagine. Right? Like, literally, they were listening to my question and said, like, you didn't know that? And I was like, dude, I don't know. Like, why they let me into this lab, right? But by the end of it, what I was able to kind of find a foothold, right? And then I understood like a whole lot of things, right? And I also understood that like in molecular biology, like specifically, it's a bunch of recipe, right? And like the recipe is in a certain way. And if you look at the different lab, they do the stuff a bit differently, right? And all has to do with like the history of the stuff. And some mistakes with like living things are just like pure chance. Like, your thing is messed up, right? And I remember one time my thing was messed up 3 times in a row. But the bacteria culture was trying to like make grow and not die. At some point, like it got really weird, and I was showing this to the supervisor, always in his office. Like I was just walking in and like, you need to help me out, right? You got me in, you help me out, right? And he was like, oh, just ask this other guy. Like he's a genius about this stuff. Okay, cool. And then I asked the dude, like long dreads, like super chill dude. And he was looking at my stuff and he was like, yeah, this is messed up. So I was like, why? He's like, not sure. It could be like 100 different things. And I was like, so what did I do? Like, try again. And that's it, right? So I was like, okay. So it's a bit different than like the other more like deterministic thing that I was doing before, right? Like we're dealing with living things. There's some stuff that if you do it like wrong for sure, you're going to contaminate your things. But there's other things that like happen because it's like literally like a more complex living thing that is trying to grow, right? You're shoving a bunch of stuff in bacteria and you're trying to make them express a gene and then like create protein, right? Like the bacteria is something living. Like, so like sometimes like you don't want in this specific configuration that you didn't account for. Yeah. So I learned
way more variables.
I learned a whole bunch on the fly. But that was fun.
Well, that's just you going and like pestering these people with all your questions, which I guess initially were a little bit novice questions, but then you built up this form master. That really takes putting ego aside and like, I'm going to ask the dumb questions because I have to learn this stuff because you don't get results if you don't have your foundation.
What's the choice that I have? Like the choice is I'm going to be dumb, right? Literally, like I could instead look dumb, right? And then just tomorrow I'm going to be a bit less, right? And then I'm just going to like climb up with the mud pit that I put myself in. And the interesting thing is that by about the 5 months mark, because I was during the whole summer, I was actually pretty good at this. Like the assistant was like, "Oh wow, you're running your experiments so well, and then like they're so well sequenced." I was like, "I'm just doing what the heck you're doing, so thank you." And then like the supervisor tacked on to like a PhD candidate to take over my work after I was out, and she was taking notes and asking me questions. I was like, "Wow." I can actually like provide something now because I've done everything that was messed up for like 6 months at that point.
It's very real. Yeah, once he has something of value there when they're taking notes on what you've learned. Yeah.
So this is good, man. I think like we can maybe switch gear to the stuff that you're working on right now, which is Math Academy. And like I've been looking at this stuff. I never actually used it, right? And I'm planning on using it. And I saw that you said that like you can teach math 4 times faster. It's basically like the system that you were using before, but in a more kind of applied and well thought of way. For someone, let's say like me, that never used it, right? And let's say I don't know anything about it. Like what does it look like? What does the learning section look like? Like how the system works? Because it's not like a classical. You watch a video and you do the stuff. Like, what's the flow looking like here?
Yeah, so starts out with the diagnostic test. Figure out what you know, what you don't know, in whatever course you're trying to take. It's going to look back for missing prerequisites many years back into math. So if you're placing into calculus, it's gonna test you on a whole bunch of algebra. Like you don't know completing the square. Well, guess what? You're going to learn completing the square. We're going to add that to your learning plan. Makes this custom course for you. Now you got a custom course. that you're going to go through. This is kind of like your knowledge graph. And so we know, what you're ready to learn and what you don't know. And we're going to serve you stuff that you are ready to learn. And so this is going to be on your knowledge frontier, we call it, your kind of your edge of mastery. And we're going to build up your understanding of these topics. Now, what does a single learning experience on a topic look like? Well, this is a lesson, and it's kind of like a sequence of minimum effective doses of instruction and you actually solving problems. So you think like, this whole situation is very similar to if you were to go with a personal trainer. What are they going to do? Well, they're gonna first just see like, okay, what are you trying to do? What sport are you prepping for? Or what are you trying to increase your vertical jump? Or what are you trying to do? Where are your weak points? And what can we do to get you, better at those? They're going to have exercises for you. And each exercise, they're going to I'll demonstrate it once. Like, we'll talk like, this is what it is. Here's how you do it. Okay, now you practice. And so that's what a lesson is like. It's starts out with just a brief introduction. And then we immediately launch into problem solving. You see, okay, you got your introduction. This is the type of problem that we're going to focus on solving. Here's an example of like how you solve this type of problem. Okay, now you do a few problems. If you're just knocking it out of the park, like you answer the first two questions in a row, it's like, oh, hey, you got it. Let's move on to the next more challenging version. So if you're struggling a little bit, you get like, oh, first question wrong, next one right. Like, we're going to make you solve a few more problems you got to end on two successes in a row before advancing to
make me think of a tutor, actually, because that's what I was doing. I was asking them like, like, hi, nice to meet you. Like, what do you know? And then they were blabbering about like everything. And I was like, cool, let's like do some stuff. Like, and I was looking at like, he doesn't know this stuff. Let's just like go back and then do this thing. And, now you get it. Okay, perfect. Like, we're not going to waste time because you're literally paying me right now. Right. So we're going to go and move to the actual stuff that you need to was this inspired by that sort of a one-on-one
so this is born out of our hands-on experience teaching and tutoring,
right, you said,
and just like the tutor is really, I'm glad you brought that up, because the tutor is that's like our model organism. Basically, we're trying to emulate the decisions of an expert tutor who knows everything about your knowledge profile, like what you know, what you don't know, and has unlimited computational bandwidth to like have it can just make up problems. Like it's got a whole inventory of problems that it can match you with, and every single answer that you do, it's going to kind of take that into consideration to get you working on just what is the most efficient use of your time right at this second. Okay, we're gonna have you do that.
Okay, cool. And you mentioned like expert knowledge about the stuff. Like, behind this whole thing, there's like a knowledge graph that is mapping like, I think 2000 some topic. But the interesting bit that got my attention here is that like they were encoded manually. Like you like, I think you spent like what, 200 something hours on
I can talk a bit about
crafting that stuff. The whole graph.
So we started this stuff. I mean, it was pre LLMs, right? This is like, there's just no way to generate any of this information. So we started this stuff back in like 2016, I think, ish, is when Jason and our director of curriculum, Alex Smith, started working on this thing. I joined around like in 2018, and so a lot of this stuff we're just we're handcrafting it manually. And to this day, everything is very, it comes from a human expert just paying very close attention to, based on their experiences teaching, and what they know about, max efficiency learning and how to get students through material in a very in a way that's guaranteed to work. How do you do it? And so we build like a lot of tooling over the years to make this process more and more efficient. So we're leveraging like all the tooling that we can. But ultimately it comes from a human domain expert is making sure that like all of this is to their standards and this is all mapped out by them. So this is Alex Smith, our director of curriculum. He builds kind of the forwards knowledge graph of like, okay, what are the topics that we want to have students learn? What is this course? This right. Calculus course. What is it? What are all the topics in it? We got about 300 something topics in our calculus course. Each one is like an atomic unit of knowledge consisting of roughly like 3 or 4 knowledge points, where it's like it starts out with the simplest version of the problem, and then layers on additional complexity as you evidence your ability to solve problems in each successive knowledge point. And so he maps all this out. He connects everything up. The prerequisites. What do you need to? What topics do you need to have learned before we serve you this new thing? And I kind of encode this backwards graph. We call it the encompassing graph, and it says what skills encompass what other skills. What sub skills are you exercising as components of more advanced skills? And this helps with our space repetition algorithm, which is always, when you do a review on an advanced skill, you're kind of implicitly practicing a lot of sub skills. Yeah. And so we're always trying to, something that we do is we're always trying to maximize your learning efficiency. So if we can get you practicing your sub skills that are kind of due for some review, if we can get you practicing those by learning something new, learn a new lesson that knocks those out, then the algorithm serves.
So it's like a directed acyclic graph, right? Because there's no there cannot be any cycle that would not make sense.
Right.
And then like if you're working on like this skill that like has the dependency, and you're super good at this whole kind of like a parent lineage is kind of solved, so you don't need to go back to that. Okay, cool. This is
exactly. And so something about just the whole, approaching this as so it's like, why not just, generate this, just try to generate all the content with like an LLM or something. Well, so the thing is, a lot of this content, the reason why it works so well is because it's based on all of our learnings throughout the years of doing this manually. Right. And while LLMs are like they're very, they are really good at traversing this whatever knowledge that they've been trained on, right? Everything that's been written down on the internet, and often like applying sequencing of that knowledge to kind of go expand beyond the initial knowledge base. There's a lot of stuff that you can learn by just working with students hands-on, and just kind of almost like extracting data from reality itself, not just a compressed version of like this is reality according to all the text that's been written on the internet. There's a lot of stuff that's kind of like off the training space. That
like this is not mapped anywhere. Like seeing like somebody like an actual human being trying to get toward whatever they're doing in a class, and seeing like the 100 different way they can struggle like firsthand. This is way different than like even like the research about like teaching, or like the research about learning. It's way different when you're looking at this kid right here and how they're struggling and why they're struggling. You can decompose this for sure, right? And there's like emotional component, like resistance to this, like they don't like the material also, maybe, right? All of this stuff can go into there. It's really something very complex, right? And as you see more of these students, you can kind of start to map it out. But like I've never seen anywhere like something written like about like the specific reaction that they can have to the material.
Well, actually, just on what you were talking about, like students' reaction to material, that's one of the things that, the design of minimum effective doses of instruction and practice. Part of this is just inspired by, cognitive science of like, active practice. Let's maximize the amount of time that you're actively solving problems with guidance. But another part is also just inspired by Jason Roberts, founder. He always talks about like how it's not, when he was sitting in math class, it's not that he hated math, it's that he hated being talked at for an hour. And so we've realized that so many students especially students like you know, ADHD, or just sort of just like really can't sit still
Right.
type of students. Like they don't want to watch a video for an hour. They don't want to watch an hour long lecture video. And if they do, it's often because they are just want to like stare off into space and not think about it. It's like what really keeps the students engaged with the process is, you know, actively solving problems that are at the right level of difficulty, kind of entering sort of that flow state right at the edge of their ability. But I want to say, in addition to like, you know, just designing like the lessons internally to try to, you know, keep the experience like, you know, maybe a little challenging but very achievable for students. The other part is like there's also the whole connectivity of the knowledge graph. So this is stuff that you probably would not think about if you're just like trying to maybe get an LLM to dump out a knowledge graph, or just ask somebody else to design a knowledge graph. There's a lot that comes into play in terms of structuring the knowledge graph to make students successful.
Yeah.
And so like breaking, we often think about things like quantifying the cognitive congestion of various nodes in the knowledge graph. Like if you have a topic that has like 10 different prerequisites that are all being pulled in that you've never practiced pulling in together before, like it's gonna inflate the cognitive load a ton. And so there's just a million of these little optimizations that we put in to make the knowledge graphs like really easy to learn from.
Yeah. And even when you are teaching, right, sometimes you don't remember like there was like that much prerequisite, and you're teaching it like, hey, it's supposed to be simple. You do this, and like, what's that, right? Like, oh, it's taken from this. What's this thing, right? And then you're like, oh, okay. And then we have to go back. The knowledge graph thing is very interesting for me because it is trying to get to like, I mean, this golden type of learning where you have an expert next to you and then he's just like guiding you, right? With like an infinite amount of patience, right? And like goodwill. They will be there like rain or shine, and they will just like help you like get through your stuff, right? And I was thinking that like a textbook is also just that, right? A textbook is this, but it's like handcrafted with one or two authors, and that's pretty much this, right? And like they don't have as much flexibility in how they're presenting the material because they have to make it like extremely linear. And yeah, you see, like I've seen this in like the more advanced class, right? Like at some point the chapter kind of doesn't make any sense anymore because like it does branch out, and then there's like, okay, this is like also for these three topic, and then by the way, this one you require these two, and then this other, and then like the later chapter is always just like, yeah, good luck, kid, right? Like go ahead and like best of luck, and you always see, depending on the textbook, some biases from the authors, and then some like gap that are in there, or like some stuff that are more interested than others that are there interested in applied stuff. But it seems to me that this knowledge graph is like a deconstruction of this stuff, and then you're of course injecting like the knowledge of the expert, because they are acting as a pseudo like source of truth for the knowledge of the one-on-one tutor that happens.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of like I think that's a good analogy. It's like if you took a textbook, and let's say that this textbook was constructed not just by one author just doing a brain dump in isolation, but an author, an expert on the subject who's also looking at all the other textbooks, all the other treatments of the subject, trying to just hit all the bases, a comprehensive course. And so they write this textbook, and then instead of presenting it to the student in this linear sequence, just here's the unit on, I'll just use algebra as an example. Here's the unit on linear equations. Okay, now let's move up to quadratic equations. Okay, now let's do some trigonometry. Instead of presenting by units, you really chop it up into the atomic bits of knowledge, and have that way you can really trace out the student knowledge as a contiguous it's a contiguous area in the knowledge graph. You know exactly what they're ready to learn. You can deliver the next pieces of knowledge. You can kind of adapt the number of problems to the student, and you're also you keep it interesting, right? You don't have to just do one unit for an entire week or 2 weeks. At school, I often like, this quarter we're doing trigonometry, nothing but trigonometry for for like 3 months
But he's
straight.
sick of it at the end, right?
Yeah, I know you get sick of it, and it's like, in addition to just getting sick of it, it's like that's not even an efficient way to
Yeah.
learn the material. It's like ideally you want to be spacing it
Yeah.
out, coming back, revisiting it. You don't want to be blocking or like having your practice on the consecutive material all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interleave through all the different units. Yeah.
But like a classroom, I think is always flawed because like it's a one-to-many type of
Yeah.
teaching, right? It's not like one-to-one, like custom made stuff. I
Yeah.
always find it funny. Like I brought my wife to one of my class. It was organic chemistry 3 or something like that, and it's like this giant stadium that can hold 700 students, and then there's like this one tiny teacher at like over there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's like an impossible task for one team. Like, I mean, that's a good example because like 700 students, how are you gonna? You can't just one teacher cannot deliver an optimal learning experience to
yeah,
700
and
students
like
simultaneously.
it's very
Yeah,
easy to hijack, no, because
yeah,
like I was never afraid to ask questions because my mentality was like, I paid for this stuff, I'm
mhm,
gonna learn this. So like I was raising my hand in the
yeah,
700 people and asking like the dumbest question, like that I didn't get or something like that. And like if you think about it, there's like 500 people that are like, ah shit, there we go again, right? This stuff that like you didn't understand this
yeah,
thing, but like it's very inefficient. Like it's absolutely it's just a way to scale to like so that the average can go up or something like that. But on an individual level, it's not that it's not the best way to learn. On the topic of knowledge bases, right? Like there's the expert curation here. Do you think that generation capability of LLM are useful as an interface to the knowledge base with the student? I'm not talking about like generating a knowledge graph. Let's say we have like a very well curated knowledge graph made by expert, reviewed, and like really well crafted in a way that like it's very hard for an AI to kind of like figure this out. Do you think that like having an interface has any use of this, or like even then it won't be that useful?
Well, I think it's an area that is it's on our radar, worth paying attention to. At this moment, there's a lot of challenges with that sort of setup. It's one of those things that's like, I mean, there's a pull, right? You want to imagine like you think of efficient learning, like often you think of this personalization, this glove fit. You often imagine like some tutor having a personalized conversation with a student around their interests, relating the material to their interests and stuff like that. Um, Now, that can potentially work really well in some cases, but there's a lot of surface area for things to go off the
Oh yeah.
rails. And so just to name a few cases, sometimes students want to kind of get out of scope of a topic.
Yeah.
Like you're teaching one thing, and they're like, "Oh, what if you do this? What if you do that?" Blah 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 blah. And so some amount of this can be like can enrich the learning experience, but there also comes time when it's like, kid, like I know you're excited about this stuff, but we're just talking in the abstract right now. I used to back when I was teaching, I would have some students sometimes who would ask me like tons of questions about like we'd be learning like introductory calculus stuff, and then they'd start asking me questions about like what's the hardest integral to solve, or just like are all integrals solvable? Like how do you know or how do you not know? And pretty quickly you get into a realm where you're no longer really like doing skills based teaching. You're just kind of like talking around the subject, almost as if they were watching like a YouTube video on like some visualization and like what's the hardest math problem, or
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
or like that kind of stuff. And so it can be, there's some element of like, well, okay, so you got to kind of scope it down to know like there's a balance to be had, and you don't want to allow the scope of what you're doing to
Yeah.
bleed too much. Another part is that I mean, so in addition to making it non-gameable and stuff like that, there's a challenge in that generating content on the fly is always, I mean, LLMs are like stochastic generators, right? And so you don't, I mean, you can, they've gotten a lot better at all the like hallucinations and stuff. There's definitely like order of magnitude improvement in that. If you don't have static content underlying, it's a
a
lot
gamble.
harder to, yeah, you're right, it's a gamble. So and then additionally, just to name one other thing, one thing we do a lot with our knowledge graph is that's an advantage of having this kind of static content is analytics. On, you know, every student is being served the same exact step-by-step lesson that we have been optimizing for years to be the most, like, assuming the students have mastered the prerequisites leading into that lesson. This is the most efficient, most robust way of getting a student to learn the material in that topic. And so a lot of these optimizations, you know, maybe we had 3 knowledge points and knowledge point number 2 was actually a little too aggressive, and instead of 98% of the students getting through it on the first try, it's only like 80% or 70%.
Right.
And then we break that up into 2 steps, and like, just, you know, we do, all this content has gone through so much refinement, analytics refinement. And once you kind of get rid of like this idea of static content, it makes it a lot more difficult to do analytics. Yeah.
But like,
now, not to say that this could never work, just to say there's still lots of challenges.
That's like because I built like AI system for like a production grade and stuff like that. The one part I am always looking for when to apply like a like LM based generation is if I can get like this shape of summarization, right? If you can get like the base ground truth and then in some shape or form, right, able to kind of go down like this, it almost always work, right? It almost always work, and like you have very little guardrail to put because they will summarize, right? And then they're very happy to just summarize and not do anything else than do that. And like, even though they can like I'll put it in like conversational way, like put on different masks, they are still just literally summarizing the content. So in your case, I think like having this like static graph that like no AI is able to touch it, right? And then having like this kind of thin like a layer between the static content and the user, you can literally leverage one of their best quality, which is to be like extremely psychophantic, right? Like they will like rope in the user in the conversation and kind of deliver the content in like how to say it, like a way that like it's more amenable to this specific person. Because like I remember when I was tutoring, I could not talk the same way to everybody, right? There's some like I had to like do it in a different way, right? I had like to like take different example, right? Or like bring them into like I'd say like ask them more questions, right? Than others. Others just like try it, and then we had just this feedback loop. Others literally had to be taken by the hand for the first because they were kind of frightened by the problem, and then we do it again with a different variation, but it's the same stuff, right? And then we do it again, and then they feel comfortable, and then like, you know, we can move on and stuff. So it's this part that I was thinking about. So food for thought. Like maybe it's a terrible idea.
No, I mean, it's definitely something that's I think will remain on our radar. Is like, you know, the idea of, I mean, it'd be cool to I mean, we've talked about the idea of like, yeah, you know, some people when content is presented in a way like making analogies or using word problems in a setting that they're just really interested in, like, oh, they're interested in soccer. Like, okay, let's make this word problem. We're doing all our word problems about soccer. Let's just make it fun, like that. Like that can definitely elevate the learning experience. There's other elements. Just to say, not that you've suggested this, but a common confusion though on this point is like, some people think that students need like a million different explanations of a topic until one like clicks. And so that's what I'm used to hearing in terms of like, you know, suggestions for using LLMs in the content. But what we found is that if you just make sure students have all of their prerequisites in place leading into the lesson that you're asking them to learn, then they're just prepared for it. And oftentimes, like what you experience as a tutor, like when you have to explain things a million different ways for a student to get it, is really there's something missing, and you're just kind of like trying to cover the space to just hit. What is this missing thing? I don't know. Let me like just like rapid fire, like to try to hit it. Which, I mean, if you don't have a mastery learning system that is guaranteeing prerequisites to be in place, like that's not a bad heuristic.
True.
But we are just on the topic of framing things in ways that are like really exciting to students. One of the things that we are actually have coming out in one of our upcoming courses is projects that are just based in just really interesting scenarios, at least that we think are very interesting. So it's a little, interesting to people who are interested in astrophysics modeling, planning out civilization on Mars, translating writings from long lost civilizations, stuff like that. So we got a lot of cool projects like that. But I mean, the most where this path leads, is kind of like matching, like, okay, what kind of projects are you really interested in to the student?
That makes sense. Well, a lot of stuff to to try out here. Before moving on to the rest of the stuff, I wanted to dive into like your space repetitional algorithm that you injected into this system, because like that's you're not just gonna learn it once, see it, and like check mark it's done. You kind of have to practice it again and see, like checking that you're moving in the right direction. So you have this kind of fire space repetition algorithm, which is different than like flashcard. I've used flashcard a lot, right, in my in the different classes that I was taking. But like in this specific case, you're leveraging like the knowledge graph, the fact that it's like hierarchical in nature. Can you like walk us through like high level, like how this specific algorithm work and how it's different from like just a like Anki, like a flashcard based system?
Yeah. So imagine that you want to learn math. You got to do some form of space repetition because the spacing effect is one of the few like free lunches you get in learning. If you space out the material and serve it at the right time, you can kind of minimize the amount of review that you have to do while maintaining a certain level of retention. So how do you do that? Well, option one, just this is the thought process that kind of leads to this algorithm. Maybe you say, like, okay, I'm doing all these math problems and I got to make up Anki formulas for them, or like Anki flashcards. And so the first thing I think about is like, well, what do I put on the flashcard? On one hand, like, yeah, there's some formulas and stuff in math, but so much of math is like, if you just memorize the formulas, that doesn't mean you know how to apply them or how to solve problems with them, right? So it's like, well, how do you do Anki for actual problem solving? Well, okay, the solution to that is just put problems on the flashcards and just have a system that, like, instead of serving you the same problem, it just replaces it with a slightly different problem. And so those are kind of your repetitions that you're doing. So now what you run into pretty quickly in this setting is this thing, the review hell, basically, is like people already get this with flashcards, right? That just like ones that they can go through in like 2 seconds, 3 seconds, as they pile up. You got so many flashcards to do, and even though like you can get through them so quickly, now you've just made this mathematical problem solving, right? So now it takes you like a minute, 2 minutes to go through each flashcard, and so now you got this massive backlog of review to do. So what do you do? Well, so if you start thinking about it, like, okay, I got this massive. Say you're in this situation, you got this massive backlog, right? And you gotta practice solving a linear equation. You gotta practice solving a quadratic equation. You got to practice wait a second. If I solve this quadratic by factoring it into linear pieces and then solving each equation arising from the linear piece, I've effectively practiced solving linear equations. If I solve a linear equation 2x plus 3 equals 7, I am practicing subtracting and dividing, or yeah, that kind of stuff. So you're like, wait, I don't have to do all these cards. If I do this card, you just take a card at random. Okay, I did this card, and so I can remove these other cards from the pile because I've effectively reviewed those as subskills. So that now that starts to get into compressing your reviews, because the next thing that you want to do after that is like, wait, I don't want to just draw cards at random from the pile that I have to do. I don't even want to necessarily draw the card that is most overdue. I want to draw the card that hits the biggest number of due repetitions with the one problem. What's the golden problem that is going to make the biggest dent in my review pile? And so that's where you kind of get into like the knowledge graph. And FIRE, that's an acronym for fractional implicit repetition. So the repetitions, you're getting implicit repetitions on sub-skills that you're practicing as a component of each more advanced skill. And oftentimes these sub-skills are fractional in the sense that, like, well, you solved this problem. It didn't encompass 100% of the cases of the sub-skill. Like, maybe quadratic equation, you factor it, you solve the linear components. Okay, you've handled the like ax plus b equals c equations, or maybe it's like a quadratic equation, x squared plus some leading coefficient of 1. So you've handled the linear equations that are like x plus 2 equals 3, like stuff like that. But what about when there's a coefficient on the x? There's some cases that you don't cover, so you kind of track what skills are, what fraction of the sub skills are being encompassed. And then you just, as you do each review problem, these repetitions they propagate through the graph and trickle down, almost like you can visualize it almost like strikes of lightning. Like you practice this thing, boom, 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 boom. It covers a bunch of stuff below.
It's as if like you converted this into like a dynamic programming problem, right? Like, and you're leveraging the structure of the graph to kind of like reduce the effort complexity on the student. Which
Exactly.
is pretty cool. This is pretty nice.
Yeah. So that's this is one of the kind of secret ingredients in this stew of maximum efficiency learning. I mean, each of these things, make sure a student has prerequisites in place before you ask them to learn the new thing. Optimize the new thing into a sequence of steps that are just like very bite-sized for the student to learn. Move the student, make this like minimum effective doses of guided instruction and problem solving. Don't make them do 30 problems of the same thing when like, okay, they just nailed the first 2, ready to move on. But at the same time, give them more practice. The spaced repetition, periodic quizzes, all of this kind of combines together. Each of these is the multiplier on the learning efficiency.
And this knowledge graph topic, like you got one from Matt, right? Do you think that the same overall structure is transferable to like other domain? I think like there's somebody on Twitter that is asking like, is there one for like graduate level physics, computer science? Like, should it be community built? What's your take on that?
So I think absolutely there are knowledge graphs for any subject that is hierarchical. Computer science, physics, anything math adjacent, like for sure is like a really clear candidate for a knowledge graph. Now, this is actually on our, we just released a mathematical methods for physics course. And we have a machine learning course that is like almost ready. So we are actively expanding out our knowledge graph beyond math proper. Now, how far can we expand it? Like how, into biology or history? I mean, some just get flatter and flatter, kind of the further you move from math. But my gut says you can, there's probably things that transfer over to some degree. I think it's kind of like in math, the hierarchy is kind of strict, where
Yes.
it's like you have to learn linear equations before you learn to solve a quadratic equation by factoring. Like there's just no, you have, it's a practice sub skill. There's no way around it. Now I think like in other subjects like history and there's sometimes there's not necessarily one right answer
Yeah.
to like you have to learn this before that, but there may
No.
be ways that work out nicely. I don't know. I haven't really thought a whole lot about like beyond the hierarchical subjects too much, but I know if a subject is hierarchical, you can teach it
Yeah.
with a knowledge graph.
But I remember, like, when I was pushing my learning stuff, I was also looking at like literally other things, and I realized that there's some subject that has very different shape, like um, math, programming, physics. They all went into the same bucket, right? Like of tricks that I could use. Biology already there. It's like it was a bit different. I remember like most of my stuff was compressing and summarization, right? And then making like the stuff as vivid in my mind as possible. It was more of a modelization thing, right? I was using flashcard a lot for facts, right? And then I was trying to kind of bring it down to something I understood. It didn't matter if like it was not actually the stuff, especially biochemistry, because nothing makes sense. Like all of the protein have like 3 letter and then like a bunch of,
Yeah.
and then some of them are funny. They're like called Sonic Hedgehog, right? For some reason, right? That was very different. And then there's some things that like, I remember my wife is into archaeology, and like I was helping her into one like study in one of her classes, and was like, I'm gonna also study this stuff, and it was like about Greek columns, right? And
Mhm.
all of my trick was like, okay, how do I do that? How do I learn about like all these facts about these columns and like these dates and stuff? And it was much different. Like it was again mostly about summarization and bringing like the stuff into my worldview. But that was very hard. Like I had to like put more, I would say, thought into bringing that material into my stuff compared to the other stuff where I could just like go and like do, and while I was doing, I was able to kind of like automatically, subconsciously ingest the information.
You had mentioned, yeah, just the experience of like learning biology, like archaeology, and like the different experience. So last fall I started kind of dipping my toe into learning biology, trying to leverage these cognitive science principles, mastery learning, this kind of stuff, and just like kind of saying what does that even look like? And I don't I don't know that I've figured out the most efficient way just yet, but I guess I can tell you a little bit about what I kind of stumbled into, and I'd be curious to know like
For
how
sure.
that matches or does not match with
Yeah.
your own experience and what's worked for you. But so it was kind of so with biology, I took a similar approach of just like so. My wife is doing a PhD in virology, and so a lot of that kind of comes down to genetics, and so I wanted to be able to talk to her about that kind of work, and not just have it be like a tutoring session where
Yeah.
she's like, oh, this is Justin, this is how genetics 101. Like, no, I want to like actually be able to talk at an intelligent level in the conversation, and kind of understand her work on a higher level. And so a lot of this was just like it kind of came down to understanding the kind of identified this model of like, okay, I need to understand what exactly is a cell and what's going on inside of it that allows it to function in the body. And so a lot of this, like you said, was just compressing, like there's just a lot of stuff, a lot of shit going on inside the cell, right? It's like, how do you, and all these like things that the cell is interacting with other cells or manufacturing proteins or whatever. It like a lot of it comes down to being automatic. Understanding this is about like being automatic in the process of it, like what's doing what, who's
Yeah.
doing what, where. And so I kind of turned this into like problems style. So like just minimum effective dose of this part of the process of the cell, and then like, okay, ask me questions about this, like what happens if this happens in the ribosome while it's producing a protein, what ends up happening? Does the protein still get produced, or is there a failure, or what? Things like that. A lot of these kind of almost like the equivalent of mathematical like problem solving questions. And so that had ended up working pretty well, and now it worked pretty well when I was doing it, and then I kind of fell off the wagon. Have not done my space repetition, so I'm very rusty on it now. But at my peak, I was actually able to like have a lot of like conversations with my wife about how just how the various genetic variants of whatever are causing things to happen. The virus is infecting the cell in this way, launching this kind of attack. Oh, this screws up that mechanism inside the cell. That's why it's like that. That's why this happens. The one thing that I was not doing, though, I'd be interested to hear what you think on this, is I was learning this from an LLM, and I was asking it to like it started initially trying to ask me, what are your interests? Like, tell me more about this and that. And I was just like, my interest is in learning this stuff as fast and efficiently as possible. I don't care
Speed
about
up.
like don't try to exactly. It was like I was like, because it was trying to like I knew what it was doing, because this is like you're like kind of what you kind of default to sometimes as a tutor is like, well, what are you interested in? Why don't we make this relevant? And I'm like, I already have it relevant. Like I want to be able to talk to my wife about this stuff at a high level. Like, let's go. Just tell me stuff. I want this to just burn it into my brain. I'm not going to become a biologist. I don't need to know like all the little things of like, I don't want to explore the space. Just tell me like how it goes, what works, and I want to capture this automaticity as quickly as possible. And so I was periodically having to tell it like, don't make like I don't want to hear like like don't ask me don't offer analogies unless I specifically ask for it, because it's kind of slowing down the experience. I guess I'm curious, like when you were kind of getting an understanding of these biological processes, how would you relate it to your own, or like did you mention something about making it like relevant to your own like imagery or stuff? What did that look like when you were doing it? And so was that like an efficiency speed up, or was it like a motivational thing? Or I'm just curious to know more about that.
It's more than this. Like a very, very abstract concept are kind of hard for your brain to kind of memorize and grasp, especially if they have no like relevance to like the world around you, right? And this makes stuff not stick at all, right? Like especially like memory wise, right? Like most of your brain is like highly hardwired for like a space and time type of computation, right? Like if you were to think about it, and if you were to close your eyes, you would be able to remember everything in your house, right? Like where every little spot is, and like where like stuff interact. And if something was different, one day you like open up the door and then there's like a furniture that was not there before. You will not be just like meh, and then you move on, right? You already mapped this out, and then it's not now. This thing is there, and it should not be there. And then it goes into like this cascading of like, why is it there? What's up? And then you start to look around and see stuff. So at the base level, like since like this is more of a memorization heavy type of situation where you have to like remember these facts that are not grounded in like the real world, I'm trying to bring them into like stuff that I can visualize, and I spend more time on the visualization aspect. So like, but it doesn't have to be like very, very concrete. It just needs to make sense for me, right? So the ribosome, for instance, like I was kind of almost looking at it as like a little factory, and I was drawing it like this, but with this ribosome shape, right? And I was looking at the stuff that goes into like the peptide as like some sort of coal-based chain fuel of some kind, right? And I was looking it more into this mechanical sense. Then if you were to really look at it, it's like, it's just a long chain that is folded within in specific configuration. If you think about it like this, no way I'm going to make it, right? So I was kind of reducing the level of abstraction to something I could like pinpoint in my head. And then I was doing this for all of the different kind of category. It didn't have to make sense for anybody else than me, right? And some stuff like it was more abstract because I was okay with it, and some stuff was way less abstract because like this dude need to like this 3-letter name protein with like 4 numbers after it need to be something. It need to be a dude, right? Like, and then I was making them like a little characteristic. But like one thing that really helped me out, when I get into these space where you have to quickly get like the context and it's not grounded into like clear boundaries, right? Like the biology stuff is interesting because there's no clear like we're making these pseudo boundaries, but when you look into it, it's like, yeah, actually it's like, it's more a bit wishy-washy like that, right? And when you look at the fact, it's like, actually these 3 experiments says this, but these 2 experiments says this other thing, right? I'm trying to ground as much as possible the space first. So like, okay, what's in a cell? Go, go, go. And then you look at everything that is in the cell, right? There's nothing else. There's not like a fling flung flow that is in the cell. There's none of that. There's like the 75 like bigger things that are in there. Fantastic. I've like closed the space a bit, right? And then I can start to sharpen my vision about like what they are, right? And how they interact afterward. And at the last layer, there's this kind of layer of like, we don't really know. And I'm trying to like know a lot about what we don't really know on the stuff that I'm actively working on. The rest, I'm going to put into the abstraction of like, hey, work roughly like this. That's the flow I usually used. And this is also the flow I use in neuroscientific stuff, because like it's the same thing. Like you have the cell, but then they are in the population, and then they're in the region, and then they're in the substrate, and then they are getting like fed and like have to live, and then they're shooting out like these vesicles and stuff. Like all of this is way too complicated to take all of the little details at the same time. So you map the space, and then you go into understanding each of the component, and then you understand the interaction, and you make it as dumb as and as vivid as you can. And if you do that, then it's like it's more easy to discuss. It can lead you astray if your mental model is something and it has some biases. It can literally mess up how you're looking at it. And we see this up sometime with like in biology or in, like neuroscience. Like we're thinking about the model of the brain this way, and actually like it's not exactly like this. For instance, like the synapse and then the neurons. So like like one of the model is that it's shooting up the stuff, the vesicle, right? And then the vesicle are entering a specific postsynaptic terminal. But in actuality, like there are microtubule from one neuron that can stick out to the other side. So they're kind of connected now. So your whole idea of like how this works kind of changed now, right? It's not the same. Yeah. So you just have to be careful.
New information at a lower level of scale that has kind of broke your abstraction a little bit.
But then like, does it matter? Is another element. And then like, can we keep it fuzzy for like 90% of the problem? Yes. Okay. We'll keep it there. So there's a lot of this going on, versus like the more hard type of clear cut, like a subject. You don't have as much as this, right? You don't have to kind of go into like these weird setup where we're not 100% sure how it works, but here's our model, and you're like, you have to keep in mind that like it works in 95% of the cases, but 5% of the cases you have to go deep in there and figure out like the missing thing, or like the thing that we're not sure. So yeah, and in biology, the issue is that like it's everywhere. Like neuroscience, like it's everywhere. Like if you dive deep enough into any of the research, like in any of the subject, it's not like we know really well about the nucleus, and then like there's this the outer shell here, and then the upper of Golgi is like we know 100%. Like we don't know much, and there's like this big error bar in all of this different direction. And it can really trip up your understanding, because then you're like, what even are we looking at right now, right? I remember there was one class that I took. It was like lipid too. I was learning about lipids. So, and it was like the Golgi apparatus, and we had like whole classes during the whole semester just about that stuff, right? And how they were imaging the things. And then it was taught by a researcher, which was super cool. And they were showing us the research. But then I knew like I'm at the edge. Like I'm asking questions, they're like, I don't know. Because they literally don't know, and they can't, like they're running the experiment and stuff, but like there's a lot of stuff that we're not understanding there. And like this helped me a lot get a better grasp about these material, because you're really at the edge sometimes. The edge is like it's not like a smooth frontier, right? It's like it's a bunch of holes a bit everywhere. And as soon as you solve one, there's like 6 different holes that are somewhat bigger that pops up. that connected to the other holes. When you discuss to the researcher versus like some people that are just like teaching the stuff, you realize how much it affected them and how they're teaching, because they will be much more unsure about stuff, and then they will tell you about the caveat, right? So you tell like what's going on, versus a teacher that is looking at the curriculum for like these more like a soft science, right? No, not soft science, but like soft certainty, right? Science. They're gonna tell you like it's like this, it's like that, it's like that. But the deeper you dig into, the more you realize that we don't know much. Yeah. So I just have to keep that into consideration, right?
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it makes that like, yeah, one of the nice things about developing math curriculum and mostly carries over to computer science and physics is that like things don't really change. Like in math, it's just it's evergreen. Like there's new stuff that you find that builds on top of like in directions that hadn't gone before, but on the foundations generally like it's locked in place. But yeah, I guess right. And as you kind of go out into the fuzzier subjects, there's these like just complete overhauls of mental models of what's happening.
And like I remember like I was like doing consciousness research. There was this very famous experiment, and then like it would publish, and then they were doing all of this stuff. And then there were other people that tried to replicate it, and they realized like it was not actually like 100% like solid. But by the time everybody like kind of built up their mental model on this stuff, and now it's like it's not there anymore, but it's still there. It's a whole whole new world of confusion, right? If we bring it back to math, I really like some of the analogy that you're making with sport, and I think like you were also into I never can say it.
Calisthenics,
yeah, this, and you make a lot of parallel within it. Do you think there's something specific from math that like stuff like sport coach can learn from it into learning like the actual skills for their students?
Yeah, one of my favorite, I think one of the most quotable figures in the study of talent development, John Wooden, legendary basketball coach. He has so many quotes about sports that apply perfectly to learning in general. And so I think and just any sort of skills-based learning, at least, mathematics, physics, coding, where you actually, you're having to perform manipulations on whether it's objects of information or physical objects or whatever. When you're performing these actions, and you're having to build up to more and more and more complex actions, this all kind of follows a similar suit, where it's like, all these cognitive science principles of mastery learning, like get your prerequisite actions in place before you do. Well, a lot of these are kind of, they're actually more obvious in sports, I think. Like, let's, before, I often like to go to figure skating for sports analogies because it's just so dependent on underlying skills. So before we get you doing a skating backwards, let's have you skating forwards. Before we get you spinning on one leg, let's get you standing on one leg. That's the mastery learning. Let's also, spaced repetition. Just because you were able to stand on one leg last week does not mean that you still know how to do it. We have to continue practicing this. Things like layering, just layering on more advanced skills to lock in the fundamental skills. It's like, well, you're good at standing on one leg, balancing on one leg on your skate. You've gotten kind of your ability at that has saturated because you've been practicing in an easy environment. But once you kind of like, if somebody tries to push you a little bit, or you're trying to like spin around on one leg, this is gonna force you to develop robustness in the underlying skills. Same thing happens in math, like in calculus. There's a joke that like calculus is where students actually learn algebra because they are held to account for applying a lot of the algebraic techniques. There's interleaving. So doing instead of if you're going to do a skating practice, let's not just practice stopping with your right leg the whole
True.
time. Let's
Yeah.
also practice stopping with your left leg, and let's not just do stopping. Let's do a whole bunch of other techniques. There's kind of retrieval practice, even in sports. I think is this like, well, you think of it in learning. It's like on a test or a quiz, you're retrieving something from memory with no reference. You're not getting a warm start to it by solving some easier problems leading up to it. You're just like right on the dot under
Yeah.
time constraints. You got to pull it out of your brain. Well,
Yeah.
in sports, similar thing. You got to develop a level of maybe you can do a spin on your figure skate if you practice a few times beforehand, and then you can do the spin as you get your balance. But really, you want to get to the point where you don't need that practice leading up. Stuff like that. I think this all carries over really, really well.
No, true. And I think like also like having the skills at your fingertip is important because you shouldn't think about them like as you're doing the stuff. Like otherwise you're gonna use like mental load in order to concentrate and
Absolutely.
do the movement that is needed. But maybe the opportunity is already gone, right? Or like you messed up in this sequence.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
exactly. If you're playing hockey or basketball, basketball better analogy because if you happen to think about how to dribble or how
no,
to
you're
like
done.
pass your teammate or stuff like you can't like you're not going to be seeing all your teammates around
No,
like who to
yeah.
pass to. Yeah, if you
Uh,
exactly. Yeah.
and in my case, I was doing swimming, right?
Yeah.
You get that also, like when you're practicing, like you have to kind of understand all the movement and like it's like there's a lot of coordination about all of the things that are happening at the same time. But when you're in the meet and then you're going for it, like there's no you shouldn't be thinking about anything. If you're thinking about something, you're gonna mess it up. For sure. I think we can like move the discussion back toward
Yeah.
like the sports stuff because it's a bit less abstract than math, but there's a lot of similarity, right? There's a lot of similarity about like
Yes.
how the learning is done, and like we've discussed a bit about like the sports coach analogy here, where like there is some stuff that the learning of the math happens that let's say the coach could use also. It's kind of a similar type of a phenomenon. But one thing I've realized, like when I was doing like competitive swimming, right? Also, like when I was motivated and I knew what I wanted, it was really easy. Like when I was training to understand, like, yeah, like I'm trying to like do the 200 butterfly. So like, I don't care about the breaststroke stuff. It's not that important. I want to get focused on this. So I need to really nail these 5 things, right? And I was watching recording of like the people that were hitting the time that I needed. So like there was all of this that like went into my mind. But one thing I realized is that like some of the best swimmer, whenever they had to coach, they were not that great. And then when you were looking at the great coach, they were not necessarily like the Olympians and stuff like that. They were actually a bit lower in their performance. So this got me kind of interested. Like there seems to be a discrepancy between like doing the movement and being really good at it intuitively, right? Without even thinking. And then understanding it enough to be able to explain it, right? Do you think that like there's like a similar phenomenon in math that is happening underlying or not?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think so. I think we touched on this last time talking about how like, in college you can get a professor who's like just widely recognized in their field and you get really excited and you're like, "Oh my God, I'm going to learn so much." And then they come and they're just like proof there and proof on the chalkboard. You don't even know what they look like because they don't
Yeah.
turn to face you. They're just like on the board, and like they don't really grade the quizzes or exam. There are no quizzes. Homework sets are graded. Did you do the homework? Okay, good enough. Let me get back to my research. Like, don't bother me, kid.
Yeah.
And like, yeah. So that could totally. Yeah, I think that totally holds, and I think a lot of times the people who I mean, we're talking kind of about in generalizations here, but often the people who rise to the top of the discipline, they've often gotten a lot of stuff for free, like a lot of like cognitive machinery or just
Yeah.
life situation or whatever. There are things that they often did not have to figure out a solution for. Like, you can think of like a mathematician who just like, I never really had challenges like writing my work down. Like it always like came naturally to me. What do you mean you struggled to write your work down? You just do that, or stuff like, I never like these concepts. Like what do you mean you can't just read a textbook and then it clicks for you and then you do the problem? You just read the chapter, do the problems. What do you mean the problem's hard? Like that's not like, a lot of these people can like take bigger leaps in generalization of things. They got like some like they got a GPU in their head, basically, right? Instead of a CPU, they're just running on some different machinery sometimes, or not necessarily different machinery, but just more optimized in different ways. Like individual variation in working memory capacity and like retention rates and things like. There's unfortunately, this is a reality of learning, that people are kind of like built with different specs like this, and yeah, so a lot of like learning how to teach effectively comes from, I think, having to really push the limits of your own specs and make you kind of like punch above your weight in terms of where you would otherwise be if you. Yeah. Anyway, that's so I would totally agree that this happens all the time.
I think there's a lot of this, but also there's a lot of like they don't realize what they did.
Yeah.
So like there was one case. The guy was like a menace super nice dude, right? Very nice. I never seen somebody so confused and so confusing. He was not able to bring it down to the level that a student was able to understand it, right? He was always talking into his layer of abstraction. And like, that's kind of all he did for like 14 years and stuff like that, right? The guy was smart, yes, but like I realized early on that like there was no way I could pass this class just with this dude. So I did everything else. I was doing the exercise. I was asking him for exercise and stuff. And one thing I realized that like that's also what he did before. Like he was not just some right, like he was just drilling exercise again and again. And then he pointed me to other part where the exercises were super good. Nowhere in the curriculum this stuff was there. You kind of forgot that like you have to ask the student to drill, and they were not drilling it. And while I was doing this, I understood nothing, right? So I was drilling the exercise, trying to figure my way, and then like by drilling them, I kind of understood like what he was saying, and then I could ask questions, right? And then he was like, "Okay, you understand." I was like, "My dude, right? You failed in like the meta learning aspect of the skill, right? You failed in understanding that these poor souls here, right? They don't understand that you need to do that stuff. So you have to teach that too, right? And if you don't, and you don't guide them, what are they going to do? You can say, hey, read this page, and like, okay, read it. What's next, right? Like they don't know that skill yet. So if you don't also layer it out, there's no way they're going to understand like what you're saying. And then you're going to lose them for real. And then as you move through like more complicated material and like more up the hierarchy, it just gets worse and worse. And then at some point, like these kids are completely tuned out, and then everything fails, right? There's a few outliers that succeed, but like the rest fails. So I think yes, there's some people that like have, I don't know, like a better capacity to ingest material, but the poor teacher, in my view, like most of the time they just fail at the basic of teaching, right? They actually
absolutely. The bar is on the floor.
They haven't learned that skill. And I know I'm in this mode whenever I see a teacher start to kind of question the mental capacity of a student, right? Like, hey, why you're like this? Back in my days, like this and that. And I'm like, yeah, man, you suck at this. This is the truth, man. You're maybe good at the material, but the actual teaching, this is not it. If year after year, this is happening, and you see sometimes absolutely. With two class, right? It's the same material. In one class is not filling as much, and the other one is like it's a slaughterhouse. And then they haven't learned, like they just intuitively like did the right stuff, or like they were taught the right stuff, and then like this is how it's done, but like they're not aware that they're completely lacking in this whole domain.
Well, I actually have two kind of funny, like concrete stories of watching this play out. Well, one is very brief, and it's just, I saw a differential equations class, intro differential equations class, being like the guy I wanted to teach the differential equation, like introduction to it is like, well, the solution to a differential equation is just the kernel of the linear operator. That's all it is. This is like that the students have not done differential equations before. They have not like really gone over kernels and linear operators aside from maybe a little bit in linear algebra. So just trying to jump to the highest level of abstraction. And the students are all just like, what? Like so I was actually tutoring a bit for this class, and like the instructor was so out of touch with like thinking like, oh, the students are like working on their proofs, they're learning a lot, and meanwhile everybody's just like, what is this stuff? And so like I'm trying to like fill in all the gaps, and like it's just terrible. Another instance is I actually I worked with my sister-in-law a couple of years ago, and she's taking real analysis. And like, I mean, real analysis is the stereotypical like math major wrecker course, right? Because that's where it transitions from a lot of like, you're used to, linear algebra, multivariable calc, differential equations, it's kind of concrete, and like maybe taking a methods of proof course, kind of dip your toe in the water of like abstract proof writing. But real analysis comes and is like, if you're not like 100% solid on this proof writing, you're going to struggle. And so the instructor would basically, he would serve up maybe like 5 homework problems every week, and those 5 homework problems were at the highest level of abstraction. So it's like we're going to skip over proving that a set is closed or open or stuff. We're going to jump right into theorems of like, prove this closure property of the n-dimensional sphere under these conditions. And you're like, man, can we just like work in like one dimension first with like some actual numbers, not like just like, stuff like that. And so crazy part, like the homework would not even get like really graded. It was kind of like a for completion thing. So it's just like, if you attempt, if it looked like you attempted it, then you get points. And then there were no quizzes, there were no assessments, except for a midterm and the final.
What is this?
The midterm was given in the middle of the year, and it was handed back, I think, a week before the final. So there was no signal.
There's no feedback loop at all.
Yeah, there's no feedback loop. Yeah. And so I'm told that during class, like the way he would run it is he was like write a theorem up on the board, write down the proof, like, okay, you guys have any questions? So he would mistake the student's silence for, like, he would say like, oh, great, okay, this is easy, you guys already know this. Okay, let's move on. Meanwhile, everybody's like we don't even know what questions to ask.
No,
but otherwise, he was like a nice guy, like you have said. Like
they're nice.
Just very nice.
They're nice and talented.
They just don't understand what's going on
in the skill. But like the teaching, it's so poor. I had a class like this, right? And it was my final year of undergrad, and I took like a very advanced kind of time series analysis signal processing course. I knew it will be hard because it was like one of the worst like class, and it was given by the chairman of bioengineering of Canada and stuff. Big dude, right? The research on point. And like, I swear to God, I couldn't understand what he was saying, right? And like, there was always, at least in this case, there was always practice every week. So we had the practice. The feedback was a bit lagged in time, but like, I could pester the TA and get the feedback that I needed. But in class, I understood nothing, right? At some point I was fed up. So I put myself first row, straight in like, on next to the chalkboard. And then every time he would do this, I would just raise my hand and said, I understood literally nothing. For the last 3 minutes that you started here to here, nothing. Like, what are you saying? Right? Literally, this is what I was doing. And what happened was like the other people in the class were like, yeah, me too, man. Like, what is this? Right? And then this is at this point that like close to the end that you finally realize that like, okay, this is not working. And he was taking us back, but I had to force him to take us back. It's very hard for a student to do this because like there's the peer pressure, and then you're like, I don't want to look like an idiot, but I don't mind. I was there. I literally I could have chosen any other course, right? I chosen that course because I wanted to understand the material. And now you're presenting this stuff to me that was not in like the textbook that we had, right? And I don't get what you're saying, right? Maybe it's a notation problem. Maybe I'm just a dumbass, right? But I want you to walk it through me, right? To bring me to your level. And actually the course got better. It got much better then. But it was like a ping pong every week. It was, it was me like in the front and then like, I don't understand absolutely anything, man. Can you tell? And then I was able to get like show him like, okay, I get this because you said that, but why is it different than this? Oh, I'm using another notation, and the whole class is like, oh, yeah, of course. Like if you use another notation
Yeah.
that is in the book, like how can I understand this stuff? Like, hey, are you not all in
Inconsistent.
engineering? And I'm like, I'm a neuroscience dude, right? I don't have an engineering background. And he's like, oh, okay. Like, yeah, maybe like that will be a good thing to know before we go over
Yeah,
there.
know who you're teaching it to. Yeah, absolutely. Another thing that strikes me about the how you like, you're sitting in the front row asking a bunch of questions. So in addition to kind of like identifying these kind of missing prerequisites for, a lot of these prerequisites shouldn't even be prerequisites, like a notation change or whatever. It's
Yeah.
like, why would you do that? But I'm sure there's other parts that are like legitimate missing prerequisites that were just kind of skimmed over that you're like forcing them to backfill. I think another thing that probably made this approach work really well is that you're you're effectively simulating minimum effective doses of like instruction and active, you're generate like what you're thinking about it, kind of trying to get your own question answered.
Yeah.
It's like a
I'm
rep in some
hijacking the
sense.
class. I
Yeah.
paid for this. I pay for
Yeah.
like I'm
Yeah.
paid
Yeah.
for this. I'm here. I'm gonna get the material I need right now, right? And if I
Absolutely.
don't need, and I'm not socializing. I don't care about the dude, right? Like great guy, right? Absolutely great guy. I don't care about him personally, right? What I care about is getting my learning in. And if now it's so easy, I might just skip the class and do the textbook and like be done with it, right? But yeah, like
Yeah.
at some point, like it's a bit sad, but with some teacher, you have no choice but to literally go and see them, ask question, and go see them in the office hour and just like get the knowledge out of them, like
Yeah.
forcefully almost.
Well, this is like a broken model of reality of
Yeah.
how learning. You don't teach a student by talking at them for an hour. Like that's going to overload and unless the student already knows the material already, like they're going to be overloaded with like their working memory, their cognitive load. You got to
Yeah.
be breaking this stuff up. Like, I mean, filling in the prerequisites, but also having students like, like why would you talk at a student for even like 10 minutes or more before having them like just do an exercise? And
Exactly. Yeah.
some classes do a kind of like a very like try to move in this direction by doing like clicker exercises and stuff, but that's I mean it's only a baby step in this direction to what it needs to be. But yeah, totally.
There's something that I read on your blog that like kind of go into the same line, which is like automaticity in computation is a prerequisite for conceptual understanding, right? Like not a substitute for it, but like a prerequisite. Walk us through your reasoning about why this so, because I think it touched here, and
Mhm.
like, could you think of ways of like not having this automaticity but still having the understanding? Is it even possible in your
Well, okay, so here's I think this like I think a lot of people who would clash with this or like if there's a line drawn in the sand on this and there's a battle between two sides, I think the point of contention it really boils down to what does it mean to understand something? Like there's a kind of conceptual like you watch a video on say neural networks, right? You don't know really how you've heard neural networks kind of underpin a lot of like modern AI and you're interested in it. And so you watch a video on YouTube and you learn about back propagation and you learn about like regularization and some of these things and train test set whatever. And so you get a little familiar with this stuff. Do you understand it? Like you definitely don't have automaticity. You haven't worked any problems in it. You haven't set up anything on your own. Do you understand it? Well, there's some kind of, I guess, like you're familiar with some of the terms. I personally, I would, whenever I talk about understanding, I mean like understanding to the level of like conceptual understanding to act to the highest degree, conceptualizing like there's a difference between how maybe like a basketball player conceptualizes strategy versus somebody who just watches basketball games. And because the basketball player like knows like at the fundamental level these strategies are like work or don't work because of like these movements that I'm doing. Like when they're thinking about these strategies and stuff, like the parts of their brain that are actually like activating like movements and things like it's almost like simulating
yes.
like a simulation in their head of all the underlying things versus somebody who's just seen this at a high level. And so I think, I mean, you can acquire maybe like some familiarity with just the like, okay, backprop is something, it involves hardcore multivariable calculus, and you somehow figure out how to adjust the weights of the network. Like, I mean, if you call that like conceptual understanding, then yeah, I guess you can get that without having automaticity on the actually the concrete computations. But if you talk about backprop in terms of like, how do I optimize, like, say this issue is happening and like the neural network did this is what the loss curve looks like, and this is what layer 3 reads as, like, what's wrong with it? Like, that's, I would say that's a level of conceptual understanding that you can't get unless you have actually worked through the computations.
I agree here. I think like there's two things. I think that especially like on the machine learning side is that you need to have done the movement, right? And then, like, in my view, you need to have like diagnose enough of the movement around the movement in order to be able to like directly see it and say like, oh, you look at the loss curve and you're like, this is your problem, you should fix that, and then like you do it. This is like the point where you're truly able to understand it, right? You're able to solve problem, not even without even kind of just looking at the output. You're like, this is what happened for sure. Yeah, I think it, like in sport also you see that I think the coach, the one that are great, they are at this level. They've already done the movement. It's not like the guy is an MBA and he has no clue and he's just watched videos. That's not it. He already played. He knows the movement, right? But then he knows also like how the movement comes together to get to the final result, right? And like I think like a pro athlete maybe miss this part. Like they miss the how to get to whatever because they're using the coach. They don't have to think about this. They just need to go and do the stuff, right? So they are very good, but they not necessarily have like the full understanding of like, yeah, you have to go and then sleep like this. You have to improve like this. You have your diet need to be this stuff, right? All of this need to like come around in order for you to get to like the actual goal. But that level of understanding, like if it was just a guy that like just watched a lot of stuff, but never kind of conceptualize it in its own kind of own space and own movement, there's very little that he can add, unless like it's like just a surface level, like, hey, maybe try this, and then you're like, okay, why? I don't know, and then you move on the conversation.
I've got a concrete example for this again in the machine learning setting. So it comes from when I was teaching this really advanced applied math and computer science elective sequence within Math Academy's original Pasadena program. And so we got students from the point of, they came in like having their core engineering math in place. They'd learn linear algebra, multivariable calc and everything. And we scaffold them all the way up through like coding exercises, building machine learning models from scratch, no libraries. It's like re-implementing papers in 90s artificial intelligence. And one of the things that I remember just that really stood out to me as like just validating this kind of like, you have to learn the movements in order to really understand what's going on, is when we were talking about exploding gradients and vanishing gradients in neural networks. And so I remember having talked about this previously with some people who are interested in machine learning, but they didn't have the math foundations. They had not gone through the computations, and it was always like a kind of like a fuzzy area where it's like, wait, what do you mean? Why do they explode or vanish? Like, okay, I guess the activation function, the derivative of the activation function, if the slope is too high or it's too low, or is it if it's unbounded, or like they're just kind of like, something about the activation function, then it's like it's bad, and then like bad stuff happens. All right, I understand. Let's move on. Let's move to the cool stuff. But with these kids, I made them work out some simplified scenarios, like small, like maybe a 2-3 layer neural net of like 2 nodes in each layer with like some nice numbers. So the computation took like maybe like 3-4 minutes or whatever, but they could see very clearly the effect of different activation functions. And so I would like, okay, what if let's just say we use an exponential function as the activation, or just even a linear function with or a quadratic or something where the derivative is continually increasing. And then they would see in their computations like, wait, when I chain roll it and I take the derivative of this thing and then I multiply it, it just keeps getting bigger and
Yeah.
bigger. What do you mean? Like, why did you give me Justin, you gave me a bad activation function. Why did you do that? And then I was like, all right, you see the problem. Why don't I give you an activation problem that doesn't have that property? And then it'll just go flat. And they're like, okay, great, thanks. And then they do that. They work the computation. They're wait a second. They just get one round in, like, and they already anticipate how it's going to play out. They're like, wait, this thing is already like basically the derivative is saturating. It's gone to zero, and it's just all the terms are going to go to zero. Like I don't even have to work out the rest. I already know how it's going to play out because you just chain rule, multiply, it goes to zero, and then at that point, like they get it. They get the exploding
They
and
get
vanishing
it like
gradient
in their
stuff.
bones, like
Exactly,
some
yeah.
researcher that are super good. They feel it, right? They
Yeah.
already kind of feel it, and it's very important in research, in my view, because like some of the stuff is not quote unquote true, right? Like the ground is there, but like barely,
Yeah.
right? So some stuff that we it's because of this. It's like, yeah, but there's like four asterisks around it, and when you
Hmm.
actually like feel the stuff and like understand it, you know what you can try and where you can move, and then you can get like some really cool result after that. Some are super empirical because you use like that kind of like a empirical based knowledge, but the true understanding come here, in my view. Like it's like you do the stuff and you're
Yeah.
not able to explain it. Yeah, okay, let's like you can build up the theory and do it in a systematic way in this case, and then you're able to explain what's going on. But like empirically, you can feel which of the direction to go. I wanted to move on to like the a funny question about confusion
Yeah.
in learning, right? Do you see any upside of confusion like in learning, like just any of them? Because I say that because in my like on research and professional work, whenever I made like a very good breakthrough and then like it was kind of rewarding in some shape or form, usually like I had guidance, like I know where I wanted to go, like I know like roughly speaking like what was going on, um, but I had to sit in confusion, right, and like kind of be just like okay with being there for an extended period of time while I figure out my stuff, right? But like
Mhm.
that was something I had to do. But like the best stuff that I produced was when I was in this situation. What's your take on that?
So I think the experience can vary a lot depending on whether you're kind of like scaling up on known knowledge that's just like this is figured out, like just learn it, versus kind of at the edge of the frontier where things are getting really fuzzy and like what's even true and stuff like that. So I think what the confusion represents like that, the moment where it clicks in place and you just have that insight and you're, oh
Yeah,
my goodness, this is it, and then it clicks in place. So I think when you are going through the knowledge graph of just stuff that is known, just as foundational material. I mean, I think what that amounts to is really like you're missing some prerequisites, and you build up all like you maybe there's like this topic sits a bunch or sits atop maybe like five different prerequisites, and or maybe say like 50, 100 ancestor topics, prerequisites of prerequisites and stuff. And there's one learning path in there that you haven't really, it's just missing. You haven't filled out. And so you got most of it filled out, but there's one pillar that's kind of incomplete, and you're banging your head on this topic. What is wrong? And then at some point, like whether you kind of stumble into it or somebody directs you to it or whatever, you kind of realize, oh my god, wait, so this works that way, and that's how it works. And then it kind of clicks more into place. You kind of like fill in that missing pillar, and it feels amazing, right? It's like the click, it's the aha moment. But when you're in that foundational body of knowledge, it's like, well, there's a lot of time that you had kind of wasted being confused. That like if you just had that pillar in place beforehand, you wouldn't have had to like sit there for hours or days just ruminating over this thing. And you would have had the pillar. You wouldn't have needed you wouldn't have
Yeah.
an experience, a click, an aha moment, because it would have just been like, wait, what's the big deal? We
Yeah.
just put these
Yeah.
prerequisites together. Like, what's hard, man? Like, so
Yeah.
that'd be it. And so I think when you're in the foundational like body of knowledge, these aha moments are actually something you want to try to avoid. I mean, if you're in a well-structured
100%.
curriculum, you won't actually have. I know it sounds like a little counterintuitive,
No.
but
Yeah.
it's like I remember somebody we actually had a at Math Academy, we were talking to, this was years ago. There's somebody we were talking to about like recommendations for growth on social media and stuff, and they had recommended something like, well, you got to give it have a nice name to these like aha moments or snap moments, and like talk about these things. And I was just thinking like, wait, that's like the opposite. We try to smooth it out, like so you don't have that like you're climbing out of the hole and you're like, I made it. Like, no, you just make it smooth. Now, the thing, eventually you run out of this knowledge that's known, right? And you get to the end of the frontier where things are fuzzy. And that's kind of, I think, like you do, I think this is more what you're talking about, where it's like you're kind of in a setting where this has not been fully mapped out. You're going to run into situations where you just have missing prerequisites, because everybody has missing prerequisites, because nobody knows what are the prerequisites. That's kind of what we're trying to figure out. We're trying to map out the how to extend this body of knowledge further. And so part of this mapping it out means like identifying what reframes or prerequisites are necessary. And I think as a researcher, that sounds like it would be a very valuable moment where, you're kind of sitting in confusion. Why am I confused? It's because there's some missing prerequisite. Holy crap. If I figure out what this is, resolve this, everybody around me is confused too. If I can figure this out, that's going to be a high value contribution. Yeah. So that's my take on it.
In this setup, like I learned to kind of love the confusion. Like when I see there's like no confusion, I'm like, I actually don't need to be there. Like somebody else could take my place here and then like do the stuff. We're good to go here. But when I see like some area where there's like a lot of confusion, I find like there's an opportunity to kind of like do something great, right? That like kind of push the boundary. So I learned to love these, but like what happened was, I was like doing the wrong type of confusion in school by taking like class out of order, right? Because I was trying to kind of like get this type of, I don't know why I did that, like this type of skill set, a bit of like confusion bending or something like that, where I was okay with like not understanding and everybody else actually understood, and then like trying to like figure my way out of this, and then like getting the prerequisite, figuring out like what I was missing, and then like being able to do it with the time pressure, because I literally put my grade on the line here. Yeah. So that was okay. And I agree. Like you shouldn't do that. Like there's better ways of doing it. When I was doing research as an undergrad, it was much better than when I was doing that, because there was no point in doing this for the outcome. It was more for like practicing the skill. But like when I do, I was in a research setting, or also in a startup setting. Like there's a lot of confusion there too, right? There's no one that's going to tell you like, oh, you want to build this company? Well, good news. And then here's the steps. Like there's none of it. Like, you can take a look at what others are doing, but this is fuzzy because is he faking it? Like, can I get access to this financial? I'm not sure it's working, right? Does he have the same kind of population as me? Not really, right? Is the stack the same? No. Okay. So I'm not sure how to build this. So there's a lot of that too. And then you have to kind of get there, right? While being around these confusing signal throughout. But when it clicks, and when you figure out how to make it click quickly, or like reduce the confusion so that like you kind of restrict the path of the node that you need to kind of follow, it's there's a lot of gains over there. So like this, I think you're right. I think like that part is useful. But like if there was a known path and you're like baiting confusion just for the fun of it, there's better ways. There's better ways to use your time.
Yeah, it's like generally doing hard things is good, right? It's good to push yourself to do hard things, but also like when things they don't need to be hard. Like don't make, why make it harder? Like you'll get to the hard things that really matter. So spend your time, spend your confusion on things that when resolving, it's like
actually useful here.
spend your confusion on things that have high ROI on that confusion. True, like if you're confused, you get an aha moment, a click moment. Like, how about make it something that actually like is a contribution to a field instead of just like, oh, this is a result in this math course that I skipped. Duh.
And you spend
nobody cares.
90 days on it for not that much. You hone that skill to be okay with the confusion, but like other than that, it's like more of the meta learning happening here. If we switch gear to learning math as an adult, because everybody has like this nice kind of curve of like building stuff. So they are maybe already in a position where they need to use the math, and then they kind of understand it, but a bit barely. So I got a lot of questions about that. There's the first one here that Ice Shady on Twitter asked, I'm an adult learning calculus for the first time. How do I rebuild the high school foundation while still moving forward through new material without spending a year going back to basics? What's your take here?
So we actually we came up with the solution to this problem at Math Academy, because we were getting like a lot of adult learners asking this question. Like basically immediately as we kind of emerged on the scene on X, Twitter, like got a lot of adult learners are all asking like the same question, is like, what do I do? I need to kind of start over. I'm like I'm not even at calculus. I took pre-calculus in high school and I forgot like all of it. Like, should I just start with fractions, like fourth grade math? What do I do? And so our answer to that was basically like, why don't we design a sequence that is we'll start it with fractions. So you can go down as far low as you need. You can place into the sequence. You can place out of material you already know. But it's going to strip away all the stuff that is not that is there for like in schools, school Common Core standards, but does not actually really get leveraged in university math. So just to name an example, in geometry, there's this like inscribed circle theorems, where you're like, okay, I got a circle, I got an angle in the circle, and like, if the angle, the vertex lies on the circumference of the circle, what's the measurement, if you know the arc of the intercepted by this thing? It's one of those things that's like, okay, maybe it'll come up a little bit if you do like the physics of like lenses and stuff. But aside from that, like you're just never gonna see this kind of thing. Not relevant to machine learning, not relevant to most physics, not relevant to like basically anything else. And so there's a ton of these topics that just they're not very foundational for high school math. I think it was maybe like a quarter or a third of the traditional school sequence. You can just kind of like strip away, and it's not a big deal. But you get your foundations, the really important stuff that underpins like a lot of the serious math and physics and computer science, machine learning, whatever people want to do. And so we made this 3-course sequence, we call it the mathematical foundation sequence. And our director of curriculum, Alex Smith, was really the one who put all this together and made it happen. But the sequence is all together. It's this 3-course sequence. You take the 3 courses and you emerge on the other side ready for university math, like linear algebra, multivariable calculus, or a composite course like math for machine learning that stitches stuff together. And to go from this math foundation sequence, the very bottom to the very top. So assuming that you like really like you forgot how to add fractions, like you are starting from almost zero, to fill it out all the way, takes about 15,000 minutes. Now that might seem like a lot, but if you actually do it, like, okay, how long is that actually per day? It's like, well, if you just do every weekday for an hour for a year, you can fill in all your foundations. If you're starting from the very bottom. And now if you decide to do like, I'm going to do 2 hours per weekday, guess what? Only half a year. 3 hours per weekday. Maybe you want to split that up into like a morning session, an evening session, or a couple times a day. But if you get like really, really serious, like guess what? Like just a few months. And that's assuming that you're starting from the very bottom. Most
Yeah.
people don't start like just from adding fractions. They remember some algebra at least,
Yeah.
like how to solve a linear equation. So I guess like that. So really, you can, if you're serious about this, you can get it done in several months. Yeah, the path is there, and we've had people do this and come out the other side. You know, actually, the person who I referred to earlier, who had signed up Math Academy courses because he wanted to read this robotics book and
Yeah.
do robotics, and he just had no idea, like way above him. He went through that sequence, and he came
Okay,
out
nice.
the other end, and it just world changing for him.
This is good. Yeah, yeah. And like true. Like you don't have to like hop around like the extra stuff, which is not directly useful for your goal. So kind of stripped away to the core of it. I really like that. There's two other question from Nicocube and Zaid on Twitter that says, I'm doing the foundation and learning how to do all this cool stuff, but I'm not really sure what it's all used for. How do I fill in that motivation gap? I think that it ties up to one thing that we discussed earlier.
Yeah.
What do you think here?
Yeah. So I definitely ties into what we were talking about earlier, and like the end of the pipeline where I mentioned that we were talking about having projects as just really cool projects as kind of this anchoring goal for learners, where you can look and be like wait, you like I just take these math courses and then I get to like training a convolutional neural network to classify digits. Like what? Really? Or like even cooler applications like I use a neural net to like approximate some lengthy physics computation and run it really fast, or like use a like clustering of like of language symbols and like a long lost civilization, whatever. Like we got a ton of different projects like that coming out in our upcoming machine learning course, and we want to kind of extend this to the whole curriculum, not just machine learning, but like actually do it in like just your routine calculus course. Like why not have calculus with a bunch of really cool projects that involve like and be integrated with a little physics, and have one of the projects be like figuring out the viability of some situation for setting up a colony on Mars or something, or like figuring out like what type of fuel is best for a turbo boosted race car, or figuring out like what ingredients are going to work or are not going to work for like a certain recipe given like chemical properties, whatever stuff like that. A goal is that like if we can cover the space with enough really really cool stuff, and then like allow people to anchor on particular projects that they want to do, and hopefully like not just the highest level projects, but also intermediate projects leading up to there. Like have some projects in algebra, have some projects in calculus, have some projects in like linear algebra, multivariable calculus, math for machine learning, all this sort of stuff. There's kind of like a real like an application that seems really really interesting.
There's some really cool application that like they don't require that much. Like even just reproducing a paper, like a result. So all the time it's not that much math. Like I was reading a paper recently about trying to do maximum likelihood approximation, but for reinforcement learning. And like if you look at the appendix, the proof that they have, there's nothing complicated over there. There's literally nothing. You go step by step as some of the basic stuff that you can see, and like you just need to understand like the flow of the overall paper. But you can reproduce the result directly, and you can reproduce the derivation and explain every step of the way. Just some basic calculus, and you're good to go. There's a lot of the stuff that are very approachable, but like people don't know, like outside like the boundary of the knowledge. So they're like, for sure, I'm missing something. But when you actually look at the stuff, and like, that's it. This is that's the only thing.
Well, there's one paper that we actually is going to form the basis of one of the machine learning projects, which remember I mentioned that I had these high school when I was teaching this advanced machine learning track within Math Academy's original school program. I had the kids reproduce papers, and there was one paper back in the 90s, artificial intelligence, like you say, it's like it's a cool result, and it's surprisingly like, if it's just evolving neural networks to play games like tic-tac-toe or checkers or whatever. And so like you actually don't even need to do back propagation because it's an evolutionary procedure.
Exactly.
And so if you can just forward propagate I mean, that's really just the hard part. And so not that much math involved. And then you can do it. So yeah, I think having paper reproductions is going to be a really cool thing as well. And I'm sure there's tons of these papers. Yeah.
There's another question by Mohammed FX that asks, how should teaching math for kids or adults balance exploration and creativity with what can feel like a repetitive drill? He said, like, I remember reading a mathematician Lemons, I think I also read that, and feeling it should be all curiosity and creativity, but also, no, I couldn't have thought deeply without doing the boring problem first. I think y'all answered almost his own question. What's your take on this?
I think it's one of those things where it's, as you're kind of going, we've made this distinction between when you're in the knowledge graph, the known knowledge graph, versus when you're building on top of the knowledge graph. You're like at the frontier of things. And so I think, I mean, just from a pure efficiency standpoint, like, when you're going through the known knowledge graph, I mean, any sort of creative thing that you will do, unfortunately, it's not actually that creative because it can be rendered trivial by a lot of results. Like you could study the statistical properties of random walks as a solo creative project or stuff, but like, guess what? That's already figured out. Like, so whatever result you're going to have on that is probably known already. Now, not to say that there is zero value to this, because there's motivational value to it, right? Like if the choices are like, either I'm going to lock in, if you're going to like draw a dichotomy for yourself, it's like, okay, either go monk mode for like all my studies until I reach the frontier, and only then will I allow myself like any sort of creative exploration. Like that's like, just mechanically, that's going to be the most efficient way to get the frontier. But if that's going to force you off the rails, where you're just like, man, I quit, I'm done. Like, well, then like, okay, like just do what you need to do to stay on the rails. And if that involves like just going down some rabbit hole or whatever, just to like have some kind of like fun with it, have like experience like some tastes of the rewards that you want to like get once you get to the frontier of it, then like, okay, do that, do what you need to do to make it fun. And everyone's going to be different in this capacity, and like how much of that they feel like they want to need, or what type of rabbit holes they want to go down or whatever. But I think the point where this, like, the exploration and everything becomes very valuable, like a high ROI sort of thing, is really once you reach the frontier. That's totally
agree. Like, there's a bunch of actually undergrad that I've met found really cool machine learning result at the frontier. And like because like machine learning also is very empirical in nature, right? Like yes, there's all the theory, but if you look at the frontier enough, there's a lot of people like messing around and just like trying stuff up, right? And you have this feedback loop about like, did it work? Yes. Okay. This is good. Positive thing. So what I've seen a lot of them, like the very bright one do, is that like they go into the frontier and they look at the frontier and they understand jack shit, literally nothing, right? And then they drill and then like intensely, and then they do stuff like at the knowledge gap that they have, and then they kind of build this up, right? But time to time they go back to this and then they tinker with it, right? So it's not like tinkering with like a known thing. Like for this, they completely eliminate it from their kind of regime. They go and tinker in the frontier and try to see stuff like, but then they learn a bunch of things they have, and then they're able to kind of reapply it and get ideas. And then they
unlocks a lot of creativity.
Exactly. And like some of them, like they're doing some wild stuff. Like they try things that like they have no biases. So like they're like, yeah, why not this? Why not this other thing? And then they try a bunch of stuff, and then they find some cool surface, or like a way to simplify the stuff, and then they get good result that they can then like iterate with. But when they go back into their kind of learning, they're anchoring onto this goal, and then they have this kind of desire to up their skills so that they can kind of go back to this nice project that is at the frontier and do stuff with it. Like the best student that I've seen, we're doing a mix of that. Like they were doing both the frontier stuff for their own motivation and their curiosity. And then they were never bored into the basic because they're like, yeah, I know I need that because I don't understand this part. Absolutely no clue what's going on. So I better like skill up fast so I can get that and do that fun thing.
So this approach of like, doing go to some kind of interesting project at the frontier, do what you can in it, and then like backfill to try to unlock more creativity or more just ideas or whatever to do with this thing or to understand it better. I totally see how this can work for people who have some amount of like a large chunk of foundational knowledge already in place, and I think it kind of depends on the distance between what they're trying to do and what they're doing. Because like there's other, this may seem like a caricature, but this happens a lot where there's somebody who doesn't even know how to solve a linear equation.
Right.
And they want to do like, wow, this AI stuff is cool. How do I get involved? How do I do something in it? And it's like, well, I mean, I guess you can like download and run like a transformer model or something. But if the gap is that big, like when it comes into like backfilling prerequisites, you're going to be like, well, okay, I need to learn like back propagation. What is that? That's squiggly symbol. Oh, is that calculus? You're kind of like, so it's like if the gap to fill in is not very, very big, then you can be efficient in terms of backfilling. Like, oh, I just need this, that. Learn. Okay, new unlock. But if the gap is like gigantic, where it's like you're essentially missing like all of algebra, all of calculus, and that, then I think it gets to a point where it can be inefficient to try to like trace your way all the way back down to like fractions or algebra.
The guy doesn't know how to count, and it's like,
exactly. Like, there's a level, and it's like, well, guess what? You're gonna need to learn this stuff anyway. It's not like you can just take like, oh, there's like there's 3 secret topics in all of like 300 algebra topics that you need to learn to unlock machine learning. It's like, no, you gotta learn basically all of algebra. Like, it's kind of foundational. And so I think for these foundational, like when a body is foundational like that, I think it's, if you try to just like go and backfill, you're going to be ultimately just kind of trying to construct your own algebra graph. And like, this is a known thing. This is, if you just like take an algebra course, you can get through it like a lot faster. But I agree, as you like reach the like closer to, like, okay, you're kind of within striking distance of this thing, and you can kind of see the full path between the project that you're doing and the math that you need, that the backfilling strategy can, I think it becomes less inefficient.
Yeah, there's a lot of this for like most people, but I think also like the folks that I see, even young, that are very comfortable doing that stuff, they understand really well like the meta learning skill. Like they kind of already they know that like, I can't just like watch lectures, right? I actually have to drill problem, and I'm so far down that like, I can look at this, try a bunch of stuff, but like I can't spend like 6 hours a day here. It will be useless. I need to quickly go and like build these skills. So then they go in and they see like the most efficient pattern, and they go through it as fast as humanly possible, and then they just kind of blitz through it. So like this is something that I've seen, is like, even if the gap is big in these people, it kind of doesn't matter, because like they will be able to like regulate what they're doing, right? Like the goal is over there. I know I'm missing a ton of stuff, but this is what I want to do. And I tinker a bit with it. I'm like, wow, this is so cool. But then when they go back and then they actually try to like for real do it, and not just like have this aspirational goal that is not attainable, they work on the right stuff because they know how to get like the learning they need in order to get there. People that like kind of flail in this, I see also a lot of people like this, because they want to do the stuff, but like they have no concept of really how to get the prerequisite knowledge in order to do this thing. They go into weird path, like, and they kind of get lost within themselves. And like, even if you try to nudge them back, I don't know, like they have like some learning psychosis or something like they're completely spread out, and then they have the most monstrous kind of setup imaginable. And most of it is just wasted time. Like it's just wasted. It's hard to bring them back after that. So I agree. Like there's like this kind of discrepancy. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think that's right. There's also the variable of like how much does this person understand how to learn effectively? Yeah, that it plays the same role as like a gap in knowledge. Yeah.
Last question for the adult learning stuff. There's two people actually in Clifton that ask, is it ever too late to start learning seriously? I know it's not, but give me a compelling answer with example for reassurance. Let's do a bit of a psychology here with the guy.
Yeah. I actually have a very concrete example. But before I say the example, I will say like there have been a number of adult students who I've seen go from like even in their 30s, like just go from, I want to get involved in some kind of like cutting edge thing, or maybe not even a cutting edge. Like I just want to become a software engineer, and they start this in their 30s or even their 40s, or I'm sure there's people who do it even later in life. If you're willing to put in the work, it's the same amount of work. The amount of work does not change whether you start this at the age of 15 and like emerge where you want to be at the age of 20 or 25 or whatever. Like this, it's the same amount of work if you started at 25 or if you started at 35 or whatever. And some of the things that makes it more challenging I think sometimes people think like, oh, it's too late for me to do this kind of thing. And I think that tends to be more of just like I'm not willing to put in the work given that I have less free time now. Because right, you go through life, you got like a family, you got kids, you got more responsibility. It's just harder to make time to do things aside from, especially if you have a job too, like a separate job. It's like where's the time in the day to learn? When you were a teenager, you just come home from school, like what are you doing? Like play video games or like go to the basketball court with friends. Like you got all the time in the world to do this stuff. But the amount of work does not change, even if your time to do it does. But the time that you devote to doing the work is within your control. You can choose to be more efficient in various areas of your life to open up time. And it's not going to be easy, and there's always going to be like lots of constraints and stuff, and you're probably not going to open up as much time as you did when you were younger. But the takeaway is if you put in the work, you will get to the result if you find some way to put in that work. And so I've seen this happen. In particular, there was back when I was working in data science, there was I started out as an intern for like 6 months before converting to just full time, and so there was another guy who was actually interning with me, and I think he was actually in his 30s. So somewhere in his 30s or maybe 30 years old on the dime side. So he had his story was kind of like that. He, in high school, he wasn't really paying attention to what he wanted to really get out of like career wise. He was more concerned about like, I just want to have like kids, have a family. And like that was his main goal, and that's a fine main goal. And so he did that. He accomplished that. Had kids, had a family, and he was working as call receiver at a emergency center, like if you 911, who answers the phone, him. And so he wanted to get into like just a kind of career that would offer more money and better just like life balance and stuff, and just so he could like give more to his family and stuff like that. So he was like, like I want to go into software engineering now. I want to get into like data science. And so this was he was like in his late 20s when he started even thinking about this. And he didn't know like any math, no coding background, like none of this stuff. And so he just signed up at his community college and in his late 20s, like one of the oldest students there. And he's like, whatever, man. Like this. I got to learn this stuff, so I'm going to learn this stuff. Like,
Love it.
so, and he's like, and he, at the same time, he's like, he's got his job that he's like holding down as well. He's got his family and stuff. So he's just, this is not an easy, like, sort of, like, he is pressed for time. But he's making it happen. And so he goes there, he gets his computer science degree, from community college, and then gets an internship at this company. And so he and I interned in around the same time, and he also converted to full time as well. And he took it very seriously and really got good at the kinds of software engineering they were doing, like, and data flows and stuff. He got the nickname like the Lord of the Data Flow over there, because he was like, it's just, he was so like into it. Yeah. And so he's like, because I remember talking to him, and he's like, man, I really need this to work. Like, there's no, but it's like, he was at a point where it's like, there was no, what's the alternative plan? He wasn't thinking about like alternative plans. He's like, no, this is what I'm going to make happen. There's no hedging of like, oh, if this doesn't work out, I guess I'll do this or whatever. I'm sure there would be plan Bs, but he's not thinking about, he's just focusing on the thing in front of him, making it happen. And and you know, one thing that I think is true is, like, initially this journey, like, especially if you're embarking on it later in life, that the hardest part is kind of the upskilling phase, when you're trying to prepare yourself to, you know, to get paid to do something that's more aligned with what you want to do. Because at that moment, like, you're not good enough to get paid for it yet. So you have to be doing a different thing to get paid. And that's going to eat up a lot of your time. So you have to spend time doing this other thing and spend time preparing for this new thing. It's like, where you're just pressed for time. But once you can make that transition to, like, actually earn a living from the thing that's in the direction that you want to do, it's like just total phase change, because now you have like maybe 8 hours of your life every weekday that you're actually doing the thing that's closer to what you want to do, improving in that direction. And it's like you get a rocket thruster. Yeah. And if you can just make it to that point, then good.
The start is difficult, right? Like, you don't have enough time, and like, if you're going into the wrong stuff and you're like learning it wrong, like, you're just gonna eat up your time, and then like the motivation will start to falter a bit. And like, also, like, for adults generally, like, there's a bit less neuroplasticity compared to like kids, right? And like adolescent, there's just generally less neuroplasticity. But it's not. It's kind of counterintuitive, because it's not a set thing. Like, you can get more neuroplasticity, right? Like, you can make your brain more plastic if you learn like new stuff, right? And if you exercise also, but like, if you learn new stuff, your brain becomes a bit more plastic. You have neurogenesis that is like start kicking, and you're able to kind of learn better. So, but this first like hill that you're climbing and trying to learn the new stuff, but it's hard, and then you don't have time. If you like push through it, and then you're able to do it well, every day afterward gets a bit better, because like, you learn new stuff, now you have to learn more new stuff, but your brain is better at learning new stuff now, and then you kind of snowball into that. And if the motivation is in the right direction, you actually see that you're moving, then it gets better and better. But the first few steps are the most critical here.
It's like, it's kind of like you let life ossify around you. You let the concrete harden. You got to break the concrete.
Yes.
But once the concrete is broken, like, it's a lot easier. This reminds me of just one more concrete example. There was a student that we had, that we have, and this started last year. And he was talking about how he posted some video talking about like the experience of like just getting a habit in place of doing math every day. And he was talking about how, like, when he started, he just was not really into it. Like, math is like, I think he wants to go into software engineering or data science, something in that direction, and in the tech direction. But if you'd kind of math is something like, okay, I got to learn this material. All right, he was doing a degree in computer science, and there was a bunch of math courses that he was just like, man, I don't I can't do it. I've got to like fill in my foundations. And so he started on this, and initially he was saying like, man, like every day I wake up and my brain just tells me like, don't do it, man, don't do it, don't start working on the problems. This is not going to be fun. This you should run away from this. And so it's like every day, and he just like there was at the beginning there's just a lot of like, you know, just like shut up brain, I'm doing this and we're gonna do it like in the morning before you're really like awake enough. I'm gonna beat you to like before you start yelling at me that I don't like this. We're just already gonna be doing this. And so but he said that like it's continued for weeks. It was like I can't remember, he said like 30 or 60 days or something like that. And he was like, man, he was like, I just accepted that this feeling is probably just never going to go away, but I'm going to get through it anyway. And then like a week after he just accepted this, like, this is what we're doing. He said like he started like just not having all those bad thoughts anymore about that, trying to dissuade him from him. It's like he'd wake up and he'd be waiting for his brain to be like, don't do it, man, don't do it, don't you dare start us on math problems. And it's like the brain like it just given in. It was like just like, okay, yeah, I guess this is what we're doing, so like fine. Like it's like if you get yourself, you just go through the habit enough to get your brain to just accept that that this is happening. This is the path of least resistance is really like you're going to be doing the stuff anyway. So why would I dig in my heels? Like,
but this is like pure energy conservation from the brain, right? Because it is using a lot of energy, right, compared to the rest of the organs. So like anything you can not do, it will fucking do it, right? So if he sees that you're doing something novel, especially later in life, it's like, dude, like we're like I have to like do all this effort. And at some point, it's just able to reconfigure itself to kind of lose a bit less energy, right? And it has to spend a bit more. But now it's better at like doing that stuff. But if you keep doing this, actually, like your brain is just more flexible in general, because you're not like most of the time you're not in a resource scarce environment where like you won't have enough to eat, right? So like this kind of remnant of our evolution, is kind of not that you have to kind of fight it a bit, and then your brain is a bit better. I think so. If you're an adult here, like you can do it. It's never too late. I want to switch geared into maybe it's a bit too niche of a topic because I really like learning. Like it's like something.
Go for it. I'm happy to talk about anything.
I really like, and I've seen you and then like the rest of the Meta Academy folks talk about mastery learning a lot. And I was reading your 2000 hour, like the self-directed intense type stuff. Yeah. And the first thought that came into my mind was ultra learning. It's like by this dude Scott Young, right? Mm-hmm. And like he branded the whole thing, but like at the core of it is that it's kind of an intense way of learning to do like a specific skill. And he went through the same thing as you. Like he did that MIT courseware, and he was trying to blitz it all in a year and all of this thing. And then there was some stuff that like he was able to kind of like do all of the exercise, all the exam, and all this stuff. And when he was actually doing the rigorous type of grading, he got a bit lower result than he had before when he was self-grading, but it was still pretty good. So I think there's a lot of connection. Well, first of all, are you familiar with like this whole ultra learning stuff or not at all?
I'm a little bit familiar with it. I have the book on my reading list, ultra learning book. I've read through like a few blogs on like the, you know, his journey through this. This was a while ago, so I'm a little rusty on all the details of it. But I mean this comes up very, very frequently when I talk to people. They're like, oh, this is very similar to the ultra learning thing. And I'm like, yeah, that's right. I need to read this thing again. I need to like retain it.
It's funny because it started the same way, exactly the same way as you. So like you went the other way at the end. You went through like mastery learning, which is a bit different than like what this thing is about. Which is like you have structured, like efficient, like no real autonomy about the sequence, about where you're going, and then you build this as fast as possible. But like when you were doing the 2000 hours, it was kind of a bit the opposite, where like you had this goal, and then you were kind of doing like the course in a more exploratory fashion. How do you
But
reconcile these two?
actually, so when I was doing my own version of the ultra learning marathon, a 3,000 hour study marathon. So I was actually not really going in my own interest areas. This was, I think this is a difference between me and, or my program, the ultra learning program, is how we kind of started out. So and I also did not have a very concrete goal at the end of it. So my goal was actually not to go through
Right.
the entire, or it was not like a specific project that I wanted to do. It was not, it was just like, this started with me realizing that, like just that earth shattering realization that the pace of school is comically slow. And
Yes.
if I just take this into my own hands, then I can learn way faster. That paired with like just the idea of like, okay, all this, so initially it was like, it started out as like, okay, I'm going to learn calculus. That was like the initial goal. But once I got through that, then it was like, I'm just gonna like all this math stuff it seems like it's going to be really useful for me in the future, and I'm enjoying it. Like this is a lot of fun. Like I just and improving at the stuff. So I didn't have a concrete area. Then I was just like, okay, I just want to learn like this subject as well as I can, as quickly as I can. And so it's not like I was like sitting there like being like, okay, I learned calculus. I learned some linear algebra. Why don't we go into differential equations? How about that differential equation?
True.
How about that one? Oh, that's cool. It's like, what about a cross pollination between differential equations and some like in a multivariate case, a partial different. Like I wasn't like going on Wikipedia and going down the rabbit hole on
Yeah,
this
yeah.
stuff and backfilling. It was a very structured kind of like I'm gonna like I just tell me what to do. Just find a resource that just tells me what to do in the most efficient way possible, and I want to do it. And so initially, like this. I mean, I was coming into it kind of like I wanted to be efficient, but I wasn't always going about that the right way.
Right.
Like I was hitting my head on like my end goal was like I wanted to learn this stuff really like I want to get as far as I can.
You want
Yeah,
you were going for the mastery of the skill, right?
yeah,
For the sake of the mastery of the skill. Which
yeah,
I think you're right that this is the core difference because like in the ultra learning kind of paradigm, it's kind of the opposite in some sense where you always have to have a goal. If you have no goal, like it's not gonna work. Like there's nowhere to anchor. You're just gonna go aimlessly around, right? So there's a goal, and then there's like this kind of prerequisite chaining kind of movement where
mhm,
you try to do the stuff, it doesn't work. You go back, like, what's the prerequisite for this? And then this doesn't work. You go back, and then you go back, and you go back. So
yeah,
you're
yeah,
right. If like with the discussion that we had before, there is some issue with the top-down approach. If the goal is not well defined, and if the gap is way too big, like if you never seen like addition and subtraction, and you're trying to do the top-down learning, is at the end of the day, it's going to be a waste of time because there's just so much prerequisite that you have to go through. And I think that's
yeah.
where like there's like the disconnect between like what you were doing and like what something like ultra learning and Scott Young was doing. Like they had a specific goal in mind and they were trying to blaze through it as fast as possible. And
One thing I want to say is that like sometimes so I'm never if anyone has a particular goal that they want to achieve like in machine learning I want to re-implement this paper or whatever like I never want to say like don't even try it like you need like you go fill in your foundation so like I'd go try it.
yeah,
Give it a whirl. Like if you are close enough, like within striking distance that you can do it, then like who am I to like say that you shouldn't? I'm just saying like if somebody is like, man, I tried it, but I can't do this thing. It seems what the hell do I do? Like, am I just too dumb to do it? Then that's when I'm like, okay, no, stop what you're
yeah.
doing. Get your foundations in place. This is going to make all the difference in the world.
Yeah, and I'll just like get the foundation like really slowly, I guess, as efficiently as
Yeah,
possible. So like
yeah,
I don't even think like there's so much disconnect between like mastery learning and ultra learning. Like in mastery, you're trying to go for the mastery of the skill, so you have to make sure that you have the right foundation at the right place and you're honing that stuff. But like maybe you're already mastering enough to do the thing, so you can just do it, and then like you continue and then build up the mastery. And like this whole question set like got sparked because of that biology stuff that you were doing, right? It really was looking like some ultra learning blitz that you were doing, and then you were doing the prerequisite chaining, and like every time the LM was like, "Hey, what do you want to?" Like you're like, "Dude, I'm focused on this, and we're going to that goal." In my view, this was more on the edge of ultra learning kind of sprint project than the mastery type of a skill set building.
Yeah, that's interesting. So when I was doing the biology stuff, I had kind of viewed it as like the Math Academy approach to just what do you do if there's like literally no infrastructure. And so I kind of viewed it as like, okay, I just want to spin up on biology as fast as possible, as efficiently as just master the subject. But yeah, now that you bring it up, it's true. I kind of scoped it down in particular to genetics, because that was the area, and so I think overall, like there is a reasonable amount of scoping down that you can often do through top-down planning whenever you have a goal. And so that's something that we've actually we've created courses on Math Academy specifically for that purpose, like math for machine learning, mathematical methods for physics, where it's like, if somebody wants to do machine learning, you're going to have to learn linear algebra, multivariable calculus, probability and statistics, but you don't need to learn all of each of those courses. Like there's a lot of multivariable calculus, like Green's theorem, divergence theorem, Stokes theorem, like that come like towards the end. That's like, that's not the type of multivariable calculus you need. Like it really just need up to like the chain rule and like hyperplanes and stuff like that. Which is really, I mean, it's a large chunk of multivariable calculus, but it's not the whole thing. And so there's a lot of reasonable scoping down that you can do with that. That's kind of like almost like a high, I guess it sounds almost like a midway between like the entire subject mastery learning versus the only prerequisite chaining, ultra learning, to like just a kind of like a scope it down, top down, and then fill it up, bottom up. Sort of thing.
And like, to be very honest, like the ultra learning type of learning is very efficient in order to get to your stuff, but like your foundation is still brittle, right? Like there's no escaping. You're not become master in math, right? Or like master of like language, because now you can speak it. You just are able to do it, right? Which is very, very different than like a full-blown mastery. It's more efficient to get the goal, and it's faster. It's more rewarding, in my view, also. If you're going at it at the right way, and then you understand, like, you actually have to learn stuff. Like, you're not going to just wing it and then, like, it be done. Yeah, so, cool, perfect. So I got my information here. The last topic I wanted to bring in is kind of more on the like at the fringe, right? At the not typical type of stuff, right? I have a question specifically for like the neurodivergent people, because there's a lot of them. I'm not neurodivergent. Like actually, I don't have any problem like focusing for a very, very extended period of time. And it was always a trouble when I was like speaking to people with ADHD and that were with me and stuff, because what I was doing was not fitting at all like what they could do. And not just in like, yeah, just try better. It was like almost physically impossible to do the same amount of, like, I could stay for like 6 hours, like not moving and just like churning like whatever it take in terms of like math problem, right? It didn't matter. Was reading and stuff. My only issue is I had to eat, and at some point I was getting tired, so I knew like my brain was all fucked up, but I need to sleep for 10 hours. Right? That was the stuff that I could do, right? I could do that for a week, no issue, right? And I was showing that to like my brother and like the other people in my extended family that like were more on the ADHD side. It was kind of impossible for them to even conceptualize like this is possible. Like how like these type of people that have more of a ADHD type of neural profile would fit in your model.
Yeah. So the interesting thing is a lot of these people with ADHD think that just a lot of the education system is not cut out for them, and that they have like that they're just not geared for optimal learning and stuff. And so only one of those things is true. The education system as it stands is not friendly to people with with attention challenges, like people who can't sit still. Like actually, I mean, it's really not friendly to anyone, but especially people with attention challenges. And it's like nobody likes being talked at for an hour on a subject, but a lot of like, I'm kind of similar to you in that like I can just like I can grind on something for like 6 hours before I even realize that any time has passed. It's like, yeah, but if you take somebody who has like just more is not like you and me in this opposite way, it like just the impact of being talked at for an hour, or like it just kind of limits the amount of how much can you communicate to somebody before they start doing something. And initially that might seem like some kind of disadvantage, like, well, I just can't sit still for the hour it takes to go through a lecture or whatever, like, but really, like, if you look into like you start going down the rabbit hole in the science of learning, it's like, well, that's not even a good thing to do in the first place, to be talked at for an hour. That's like, it's just some other people have a higher tolerance for it, but it's not good for anybody. What's good is these minimum effective doses of just like, okay, just tell me a little bit of what to do, and then let me start doing it. And then just active. The more you stay just like in a sort of passive state, or just like not doing anything, it's like you're not, if you go to tennis lessons and the coach just talks that for you an hour, like, I don't care if you have ADHD or not, like, you're not getting better at tennis. Like, if you have ADHD, then you might like just be expressing more like discomfort. Like, well, come on, let's go, let's hit some balls.
Let's do something, right?
But either way, the learning's not happening. So I think a lot of times, like the neurodivergence stuff just makes you more sensitive to like things that are like, there's an issue here. It's like you feel this the issue more earlier on. But so I mentioned I am very similar to you in that I can the passage of time is just it's almost it's hard to keep on track of. I can just like sink into somebody. Our founder of Math Academy, Jason Roberts, he is actually on the exact opposite end of the spectrum. We're in the ADHD spectrum. So a lot of Math Academy is just, it's built in terms of what would Jason have want? What did Jason hate about math education growing up? And like, and that was one of the things, like being talked at for a long time before actually doing problems. Like, it just hated it because, like, he's got these stories about like, well, he would just be sitting in class, he could never sit still. The teacher's like, Jason, pay attention. Like, what are you doing? And it's like, well, the problem isn't Jason not paying attention. The problem is that like he's being talked at for too long without doing anything. And and so Jason actually has 3 kids who are all across the different spectrum. One was just like very highly computationally, mathematically gifted, and just like blows through all this stuff. And he has another kid with dyscalculia, and then another kid who's kind of just more of your typical honors math student level. And so the kind of approach that we take is kind of making sure that this efficient learning cycle is working for all the students, and
all his kids.
And, he and I are so different too, and we just agree on like all the same things. Like, it's just whether you come at it from like, okay, kid with ADHD doesn't want to sit still for like for 15 minutes for an explanation, or you come at it from just calculate the learning efficiency of this setting versus that setting, you get to the same answer. I think
like the optimal learning flow, I think is kind of the same in all. Mm-hmm. I think the issue with most ADHD folks is that like at the ground level, they have like this dopaminergic dysregulation, but there's also like all of the other emotional components that are layered on top. I guess this is it's not like just like, hey, I have a problem. Like, your brain is not the same as like neurotypical. It's not thinking the same way, right? And it's fine to have like all of this different profile. But what I see often is that like they have this shame of like not being good, or like not being able to sit there and then like listen to it. So then they develop all of these kind of like bad emotions with the thing. And like, it's not about the thing anymore, right? It's about how the thing make them feel. And
Yeah.
this is an issue because also like if you look at these people, it's not they can't focus, right? It's the focus is not like as evenly spread as a neurotypical. Like in my case, I could be like learning about anything, and it's gonna be fine. Like we're gonna like learn about ballet. I'm gonna listen, and we're gonna try to figure it out. Right? We're gonna learn about like rocks. We're gonna listen, or I'm gonna figure this out, right? But like in most of these cases, if it doesn't fit into like the cone of interest that they have, it's gonna be very difficult. But when it fits in there, or you make it fit for some reason, right, making it easier to ingest into that little cone,
Yeah.
like some of them could sit still for like 8 hours, no issue, right? Like I've seen people that like their thing was coding, right? They this is the stuff. They really liked front end web development, right? For some reason, this is like something that they were highly worried in. You talk to them about operating system or other topic, like they kind of zone out, like yeah, but like it's not visual. I want to click on the stuff and like see the things. They could sit
Yeah.
there, like there's no issue about it. It's just like not as evenly spread out. So if
Yeah.
you run into like these like talking session and they can't see and how to kind of ingest into their stuff what doesn't fit in there, and then they pile up all these emotions, then it's you have to deconstruct that before doing anything else. Like I had a student like this, like they like it was like a psychiatry session for like the first 3-4 session. Like no, it's not you, it's like this, and like you see it, and then like after some time, like then we pick up pace and then we were able to do it in a one-on-one session. But if they didn't have that, or like they didn't have like somebody with patience, they just will feel dumb, and that's the end of it.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's kind of funny. The feeling of it's like the feeling of dumb is often the real impediment to the learning.
Yeah.
Not the being dumb. Like often, usually the issue is not that you're dumb.
No,
It's just that you like there's some other settings that are
exactly.
not causing the information to flow. Whether that's a prerequisite gap or just a like just not wanting to participate in the process, or whether it's you're just feeling like this is not you don't identify with this stuff, this is
Yeah,
not something you're good at. It's all these kind of blockades going to be put up, and it's just this is separate from the actual
yeah.
like how good you are at
That I think that's actually one of my superpowers. Like, I'm okay being like looking like a dumbass because I know
yeah.
that like that's just normal. Like it's you're new to the field, right? We have to learn all this stuff. Yeah, just be dumb fast, right? And then you're gonna be good, and it's not gonna be okay. Like the guy would laugh at you because your question is like absolutely basic. Okay, now I know it, and like I don't care about this guy. I'm here for this stuff, right? So let's learn it. And if we switch gear to how the new technologies are like entering a bit like the picture now. Do you think that if let's say there's a gifted amateur mathematician and like he's doing
Yeah.
Math Academy and stuff, and then he has all these like emerging tooling and like could use AI to kind of probe a bit on the frontier. Do you think we can see like some more like amateurish mathematician be able to contribute to the frontier, or still like we will need to have like this kind of formal mastery learning process?
Yeah, it's a really good question. All right, so I'm not a research mathematician, so there is I don't want to like overstep in my kind of answer to this making claims that I don't actually know what I'm talking about. So I think that this question would be best posed to somebody who has like a track record of mathematical publications. Let me generalize the scope here a little bit about just like amateurs like contributing to the edge of fields in general. One thing, at least in my experience, and that I hear from a lot of other people confirmed, is that this tooling that exists nowadays, like LLM stuff, Claude, OpenAI, whatever, all these kinds of tools they're kind of multipliers on what you're able to do initially. And so now, like, if you're not able to do a whole bunch,
Yeah,
you don't have like technical chops, and then you ask like some stuff, ask questions to the
yeah,
LLMs, have it like code up stuff for you that you couldn't otherwise do. This can feel like sort of an equalizing, like, oh hey, like I'm at the same caliber as like everybody. Like, hey, I don't have to learn how to code very well because I can just vibe code everything, and like I don't have to learn pedagogical like cognitive science and stuff. I can just tell the LLM to generate like a course for me or like stuff like that. It's like, well, okay, it is, I guess, leveling you up, but now like think about how much it's leveling up people who actually know like these foundations of what's going on. And like the thing is like when you have a high level of mastery in something, at least in my experience, these tools can scale you. Like you are the 0 to 1, and then these tools put the zeros behind the 1, go from 10 to 100 to 1,000. And if you don't really know what you're doing, you can't. It's like you start being led by the LLM
exactly
into
it will lead you in weird direction. Like it will lead you like cheerfully into like some psychosis area where you're like, what the fuck is happening here? I receive a lot of these DM like, hey, look, I made this in like 26 pages of like, what the hell are you even saying? Right? Is it good? And like, too. Did you try it? Did you run the stuff? And you're like, no, but like, am I onto something? And then you see like on the opposite side, like when you do have the skills, if you look at somebody like Terence Tao, he's actively using these tools and getting a lot out of them because he's really good at this stuff. Like he's one of the best, right? And he's able to kind of leverage them to kind of help him scaffold and move a bit faster. But still, like it's his intellect and it's like his mastery of the material that is able to like figure out when they're going wrong, or like the question is not well posed, or like there is something missing in what he's saying, or like there's a gap or something I didn't know that I need to bring into the picture. And okay, yeah, it's true. I remember that stuff is for this, and then you can kind of pile this stuff together. But I agree, like on their own, like it's very difficult for a beginner to not get like absolutely swayed out, right? Like they will not know where to go and like what's truly novel, what is at the edge.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, a lot of the efficiency gains that I've seen personally using these tools have been, it's like, I mean, it's more about delegating work that I already know how to do that I can automate more and just free me up to do additional stuff. But it's like, this is not a way to get me to offload work that I don't know how to do, because it has the same failure modes of like, I've done this before. I've made this mistake before of like trying to, like, I have not you have a junior employee, human employee, and you got a project that you're like, oh, this sounds pretty cool. You haven't really scoped it out. You haven't like gotten in the weeds on it or anything. You're just like, oh yeah, this sounds like a good thing for you to do. And then you look up a day later, a week later, and you're just like, wait, what? Oh, hold on, what the hell is happening? Like this is all, oh my god. And then anyway. Yeah.
You didn't prompt it well, but it's true. Like they go into the weird direction, and if they're not asking for feedback, they're gonna go into like some weird stuff, and then you're gonna unblock them into like 2-3 sentences, and they're like, oh, and then you're like, yeah, man, just like.
And if you can't give the feedback, if you don't know enough,
if you don't know the feedback, you're like, just go and do it, and then they're gonna try more, and they're just gonna burn out. Like, it's just not that. I also use these tools. Like when I know it's good, but also when I don't know, it's useful to get like a lay of the land, like about 80% correct, right? And like, yes, they have their own tone and their own assertiveness. If I strip that all away, I'm like, okay, there's like these stuff, perfect. And then you go and then you drill into the right things and you learn them properly. But then it quickly gives you like a good approximation of like what this stuff is actually looking like.
It gives you like a little lay of the land. Okay, here's our options here. What do you think? And then you can kind of like evaluate all those, and totally agree. Yeah, one of the big unlocks I'd say that I've experienced recently, at least with the agentic coding stuff, was kind of just scoping stuff down enough that I can get it into like that it fits into my own working memory of what we're doing here. That was one of the challenges that I experienced before, is like I'd have this whole plan for like, okay, here's the feature that we're going to build, here's the thing that we're going to do. You ask it to do too much, and then it's going to go off in directions
Yeah.
that you don't anticipate because you have not like verified everything that it's
Sure.
going to be doing, because you can't keep it in your working memory. But if you like split this up into like if you are able to like sign off, give expert feedback and everything,
That's
okay,
true.
yeah,
Yes.
this all looks good. I've seriously looked at every little thing and it looks good. And you could keep the reins tight like that, then yeah, it's amazing.
No,
Like what these
definitely.
tools can do.
And it helps, like I spend a lot of time working with a thing to get the right blocks like mapped out, right?
Yeah.
And I usually like make it write report and stuff, and then I look the report, I trimmed out, I remove like bullshit it says, and like simplify. They wanted to go into a big direction, and like if you do that, like it's gonna cost us like thousands of dollars for nothing. You just do this thing and it's gonna be good. And I iterate like this, and I iterate with it to kind of revise the plan and then start to chunk it out. But then I take a fresh session. I'm like, we only gonna do this stuff, right? This is the only thing we're gonna do. And then it does it, and then you review it, you change a bit of thing, and then you're like, done, right? Then you take the other things. But like all of the architecting and like the connection to like what you're actually trying to do is literally you done like you done all the duct tape to pull everything together. That's much more efficient than just trying to let something go when you have absolutely no clue. You're gonna get something out, but like it's very brittle in structure. Perfect, man. I had another question, but I think we covered this in like 6 different ways already. I wanted to ask you, like, to close, like, what are you
Yeah.
most excited about at the moment? Like in terms of like learning, Meta Academy, math in general. Like, what's the thing that excites you the most in this area?
Yeah, there's one thing that I think about as soon as I wake up, late into the night, all the time. It's what I'm working on, and I think I mentioned at the very beginning when you asked like what am I working on right now. It's taking Math Academy from workshop to a factory transition. It's a huge team lift with me, and Jason, and Alex, director of curriculum, and like just figuring out how to take it's like it interfaces with learning, with like all the AI tooling, everything. How to deliver this learning experience, and in particular this content, all the courses at a much higher level of scale. How to turn out more courses like a factory style, but not like not just like, hey, I'll build a course for me and then it's slop. Like how do you take the human expertise and apply these tools as multipliers to just speed up that level of expertise without dropping standards. And we've made so much progress on this in the past few months, and I'm really excited about this. But this is really our kind of like the Tesla Elon sleeping on the factory floor kind of stuff, or just like the production hell of like, oh my God, we got ourselves into this game, and now we have to like scale up and really deliver, and just it's gonna suck for the next however long it takes to make this factory work. That's kind of where we're kind of doing the equivalent. That's where we are in our journey right now. So that's what I'm doing like every waking hour basically.
Cool, man. Best of luck. And honestly, I think like there's nothing more satisfying than to build something like truly at the edge, like it's not done before, and then you're trying your best, and then you're using all of your skill set in order to get there and do the thing. That's
Absolutely.
I always felt like this was the most exciting, and this is also where I learned the most. Like I learned the most about like how to do it faster, do it better, like and then just ask for the right help at the right time. Also, yeah. Well,
definitely.
fantastic. Thank you, assistant.
Thank you for having me. It's my honor
2 days
to be on. This is great. This is a lot of fun talking to you. And, like I said earlier, I came in with reflections today, and that only happens when you have a really good conversation with somebody. It's so the testament to you as an interviewer here.
This is too
thank
much.
you for putting so much effort into this, coming up with great questions, and also answer including so many people's questions that they sent to you. Like I never imagined that we would be addressing this many people's questions, and it's awesome that we were
all
able
the possible questions. This will be well packed. Like we can reuse this stuff for like the next 10 years. I think we're gonna be covered here. And that's it for today, guys. I hope that you enjoyed the video, and don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this stuff. And I wish you all a great week.